Members will please take your seats. Members, please take your seats. The hour for convening having arrived. All members will please take their seats. Mr. Clerk, will you please ring the bell? Happy Thursday. Good to see you all. All members will please take seats. We're going to have the morning roll call. All members present will vote green. Well, green on this good what is this day? What's tomorrow? 199th St. Patrick's Day anniversary. Awesome in Savannah. All members will vote green to signify their presence in the chamber. The clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. Doorkeepers will please close the doors and keep them closed. We, as is our custom, we will begin our day with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the gentleman from the 46th House District, Chairman John Carsons, Representative Carsons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise this morning to present our senior pastor from Johnson's Ferry Baptist Church, and actually in Chair Lady Sharon Cooper's district. Clay Smith. Clay is a native of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, graduated from the University of South Carolina, and is an avid Gamecock fan, so don't hold that against him, though. He later went to Southwest Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, and has been serving at our church, Johnson's Ferry Baptist, here in East Cobb, since 2019. And actually, he started in the role, and 5 months later, I think the pandemic hit, didn't it, Clay? He's married to his wife, Terica. They have 3 beautiful daughters, and I know you're going to enjoy hearing from him, Pastor Clay Smith.
Good morning. Good to have you. Well, Mr. Speaker and Representative Carson, thank you so much for having me today. It's good to see all of y'all. Really appreciate what you do. I have a small glimpse into what you do. My first job out of college actually was working for our lieutenant governor in South Carolina, and I just appreciate the service that you do for our state. I don't know if you have any days where, though they happened years ago, they seem like they were just yesterday. I have times like that in my life, one of which was 2 weeks before I graduated college. I had locked myself out of my apartment, had to break in through the window. I got in. We used to have these things called answering machines. I don't know if you remember those. And the little red light was beeping, and a friend of mine from high school called and said, "Clay, you need to call your mom immediately." So I called my mom, who was in Greenville, South Carolina, and she was crying, and I just remember this one phrase. She said, "Clay, your dad had a heart attack, and he's gone." 2 weeks before I graduated college, he was 53. His father had died of a heart attack close to the same age. And I have a good grasp on God's sovereignty and how our days are numbered. At the same time, if I could say this humbly, I think my dad died early. He was not a man who took care of himself. He was stressed out, always on kind of yo-yo fad diets. So it didn't surprise me he had a heart attack. It just surprised me that it killed him. I grew up myself being relatively unhealthy in eating habits, that kind of thing. When I shopped for clothes as a kid and shopped in the Husky section. Anybody remember that? The Husky section? Who came up with that? The Husky section. Well, over time, I think because of my dad's death, because of my own journey with health, I've learned to really appreciate the value of health, not just mental health, emotional health, relational health, but even physical health. And as a pastor now, I see in our church and in our world people that struggle. I think we all do to some degree. And let me just say something that will be very controversial, though I don't mean it to be, I just think it is. At least in the church, a majority of the sicknesses and surgeries that we pray for are preventable. Not all, but a majority. Now, why don't we like to talk about health? Several reasons. One, it's normal to us, is it not? I mean, we live in an age where we love food. I love food. As a pastor, as a legislator, you are around barbecue and things all the time. At Christmas time, I get 30 different cakes delivered to my house. At our church, our kids memorize Bible verses and we give them candy. That's just it's normal. And we're around that kind of food all the time. Most of the time when we pray for our food, we're asking God to do a miracle, are we not? Dear Lord, would you bless this food to the nourishment of our body? And I wonder if God's like, really? Okay. So this is normal. You know why else we don't talk about it? It's because there's a lot of shame there. And a lot of us feel incompetent. We feel like we're not disciplined in the way we should. And we're just overwhelmed by the whole process. So I know I have just a few minutes with you. I want to talk to you briefly about a couple reasons why you need to take your health seriously, particularly as a leader. Let me give you 4 quick reasons. I'll go through these very quickly. Number 1 is because your body is on loan to you by God. That's the principle of stewardship, is it not? God owns it, and he loans it. And that's true of a lot of areas of your life. It's true of your physical body as well. 1 Corinthians 6 says that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. Now, those of us who are followers of Jesus, we understand what he means by that, that when we accept Christ into our life, the Holy Spirit comes in us, and our body is where the Holy Spirit resides. But there's also a general principle for all people there. God says, honor me with your body. So we are to be good stewards of our body. And just very practically, it means as a leader, you have to be good stewards of some key areas in your life, like nutrition, like your sleep, exercise, and even stress. You're not a victim of stress. You actually have a lot of control over that, and it's because you are to honor God with your body. You know why else you should take your health seriously, particularly as a leader? It's because your body matters to a watching world. I think about 1 Samuel 16, and there's a story about when Samuel is going to select the new king. And you may know the story, especially if you're a follower of Jesus. But he's going to select David, and God gives Samuel this principle. He says, man looks at outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. And that's a good thing, that God ultimately looks at our character, our virtue, who we are as a person. But it's also true that man looks at outward appearance. And as a leader, I wonder, what impression do you give by your temple, by your body? Does that give the impression of a disciplined life? Not in a vain way, as if you're trying to be on the cover of a magazine or you're trying to get abs. You know, a lot of y'all say your abs are so important to you that you keep them protected under a protective layer every single day. But your body matters to a watching world. That's the second reason. The third reason why your body matters, your physical health matters, is because your family deserves your best. I don't know what your job is like. I can tell you as a pastor, I live with a lot of occupational guilt because this is a never-ending 24/7 job, and I leave the office every day with 20 emails I could have sent, but I did not, 20 phone calls I should have made, but I didn't, 20 things I could have done, and you leave every single day, and often my job gets the best of me, gets the best of my creativity, my leadership, my energy. And then I come home and I have 3 girls. Y'all pray for me. I have 3 girls. And sometimes, if I can just be real honest, they get the leftovers. I had one of my daughters came down the stairs the other day, and she asked for advice on something. I gave her what I thought was great, sound advice to help her problem. She started crying and ran up the stairs. And I looked at my wife and said, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have zero idea, how to lead these girls. But my family deserves my best. I had a great pastor friend who said one time, he said, the greatest gift you can offer your congregation is to be the healthiest version of yourself. And to some degree, the greatest gift you can offer to this role and to our state is to be the healthiest version of you. But here's the last reason why. And this is something I think we don't talk enough about, because when we talk about physical health, we often don't think it's a spiritual issue, though it is. And we often say, well, I just want to lose a couple pounds. But can I give you a bigger vision than that? The fourth reason why you should care about your physical health is so that you can lead longer. If you think about it, why do people want to get in shape? Well, it's because they want to look good. I think we all have to admit that's something that we care about. We don't want to be vain, but it is something we care about. I think the older you get, the more it's just you want to feel good. You're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. But the great vision could be that you could do good longer. We live in an age where we're infatuated with youth and youthful leaders. But who's to say that your 60s, 70s, and 80s might not be the greatest years of impact in your life? Amen. We just had church. Amen, right here. But who's not to say that those couldn't be the greatest years in your life? And you have to have a bigger vision than just losing a few pounds. You have to have a vision for what does it look like to be as healthy as long as I can. Why? So that I can do more longer. So I just want to challenge you guys to think about your physical health, the impact it has on your leadership, so that you could do good for the Lord longer. And the good news is, in a couple hours, you got lunch coming, and God's going to give you a test, and He's watching, all right? So, would y'all join me, and let's pray together. Father in heaven, I thank you for these men and women, for this job that is often a thankless one, and yet is so important as they serve our state so well. Lord, I'm grateful as a constituent of the wonderful work that these men and women do. Lord Jesus, I just pray that you would help them to honor you with their bodies, Lord, not in a way that shames them or fills them with guilt, but Lord, that they would take seriously what it means to take care of this body you've given to them. So ultimately they can do more for you longer with a greater impact in their life. Lord, I pray your blessings over them as they go in this day in session, Lord, that you would guide them and lead them in the wisdom that you want them to have. And God, we thank you for today. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. And now would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Stay right there now. Let me get this a little bit done. Doorkeepers may unlock the doors. Members, you may join Pastor Smith in the South Anteroom for some photos. And stay healthy. Chairman Tarvin, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Information and Audits has read the journals from the previous legislative day and found it to be correct. This is the last day I'm going to mention what day it is. It's day 35. And some of you guys, it's your first year. I came in on day 21, I think. You ain't seen nothing yet. That's Tarvinology. Be awake, pay attention, and be here. On another note, Mr. Speaker, a river cuts through stone not because of its power, but because of its persistence.
No truer words have ever been spoken, Chairman Tarvin. And you mentioned day 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, and 40. Would be appreciated. Chairman Tarvin, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to dispense with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Representative Estration, the 104th moves following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period. Unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. Reports of standing committees. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 738 by Representative Hilton of the 48th, Jackson, the 128th, Rhodes, the 124th, Jaspers, the 11th, Perkle, the 169th. Bill be titled an act to amend Chapter 2, Title 34 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the Department of Labor.
Industry and Labor.
House Bill 739 by Representative Seaball, the 34th, Carson, the 46th, Anulowitz, the 42nd, Stoner, the 40th, Parsons, the 44th, and others. Bill be titled an act to amend an act creating the State Court of Cobb County.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 740 by Representative Williams, the 168th, and Deloach, the 167th. Bill be titled an act to authorize the governing authority of the city of Hinesville to levy an excise tax.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 741 by Representative Taylor, the 92nd, Moore, the 91st. Bill be titled an act to amend an act creating a Board of Commissioners for Rockdale County.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Bill 742 by Representative Green, and the 154th. The bill be titled an act to authorize the assessment and collection of a technology fee by the Magistrate Court of Clay County.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
House Resolution 508 by Representative Horner III, Moptown of the 17th, Tarver of the 2nd, Cameron of the 1st, Chastain of the 2nd of the 7th, and others. A resolution urging the Attorney General of Georgia to bring forward a claim before the Supreme Court of the United States.
Interstate Cooperation.
House Resolution 519 by Representative Jenkins of the 136th, Burchett of the 176th, Knight of the 134th, Chokas of the 151st, Corbett of the 174th, and others. A resolution creating a House Study Committee on fishing access to freshwater resources.
Judiciary.
House Resolution 520 by Representative Cooper of the 45th, Hilton of the 48th, Evans the 57th, Smith of the 18th, Hutchinson of the 106th. A resolution urging members of the Employment First Georgia Council to develop recommendations.
Industry and Labor.
A Senate Bill 294 by Senator Burns, the 23rd. A bill be titled Act to provide a new charter for the town of Kamak.
That's KMAC.
KMAC.
Intergovernmental Coordination.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 728 by Representative Chokas of the 151st, a bill to repeal an act to create a Board of Commissioners of Webster County. House Bill 729 by Representative Lupton of the 83rd, Roberts of the 52nd, Oliver of the 82nd, a bill to amend an act to incorporate the city of Brookhaven in DeKalb County. House Bill 730 by Representative Lott of the 131st, Fleming of the 125th, Newton of the 127th, and Leverett of the 123rd, a bill to amend an act to create a Board of Elections for Columbia County. House Bill 731 by Representative Drenner of the 85th, Lupton of the 83rd, Crawford of the 84th, Barnes of the 86th, Taylor of the 92nd, and others, a bill to amend an act to abolish the offices of Tax Receiver and Tax Collector of DeKalb County. House Bill 732 by Representative Green of the 154th, a bill to authorize the assessment and collection of a technology fee by the Magistrate Court of Quitman County. House Bill 733 by Representative Gladney of the 130th, Prince of the 132nd, Howard of the 129th, a bill to amend an act regulating public instruction for the County of Richmond. House Bill 734 by Representative Chokas of the 151st, a bill to repeal an act to provide a new charter for the City of Preston in the County of Webster. House Bill 735 by Representative Gunter of the 8th, a bill to authorize the governing authority of the City of Hiawassee to levy an excise tax. House Bill 736 by Representative Williams of the 148th and Hagan of the 156th, a bill to amend an act to create a Board of Elections and Registration of Ben Hill County. House Bill 737 by Representative Chokas of the 151st, a bill to readopt and revise the laws pertaining to the Commission of Unified Government of Webster County. House Resolution 488 by Representative Meeks of the 178th, Jaspers of the 11th, Corbett of the 174th, Houston of the 170th, Jackson of the 128th. Resolution reauthorizing the House Rural Development Council. House Resolution 489 by Representative Maynard of the 56th, Thomas of the 65th, Williams of the 168th, Jackson of the 128th, Moore of the 91st, and others. Resolution recognizing and commending Vice President Kamala Harris and recognizing the first Friday of October of each year as Kamala Harris Day at the State Capitol. House Resolution 490 by Representative Olalier of the 59th, Townsend of the 179th, Glaze of the 67th, Green of the 154th, Hagan of the 156th, and others. Resolution creating the House Study Committee on Education Funding Mechanisms. House Resolution 491 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd, Stevens of the 164th, Jackson of the 165th. A resolution honoring the life of Judge Willie Lovett Jr., dedicating an intersection in his memory. House Resolution 492 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd, Westbrook of the 163rd, Stevens of the 164th, Jackson of the 165th. Resolution recognizing Flau J. Johnson and dedicating an intersection in her honor. House Resolution 493 by Representative Gilliard of the 162nd, Jackson of the 165th, Westbrook of the 163rd, Stevens of the 164th. Resolution recognizing Mr. E. Larry McDuffie and dedicating an intersection in his honor. Senate Bill 227 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and Williams of the 25th, a bill to amend an act to create a Board of Elections in Bibb County. Senate Bill 292 by Senator Moore of the 53rd, a bill to amend an act to provide a homestead exemption from all Catoosa County School District ad valorem taxes. 3 second readers.
Reports of standing committees the clerk will read.
Representative Campbell, 135th District Chairman of the Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Locals, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination Locals had under its consideration following bills of the House. Instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 597 do pass. House Bill 666 do pass. House Bill 695 do pass. House Bill 702 do pass. House Bill 703 do pass. House Bill 708 do pass. House Bill 709 do pass. House Bill 711 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Campbell, 135th District Chairman. That completes the reading of the reports of standing committees.
Members, we're going to move on to morning orders. We have a technical difficulty with the machine that we're going to solve here in a minute, but if I can have your attention just for a moment. I'm sure these words will be echoed into the other chamber later today. Now, as we all know in this house, we all have a set of rules we have to conform with when we expect to pass legislation that's impactful on the people of Georgia. You introduce a bill, goes to committee, committee hears the bill, and you hopefully pass it out of the committee. Then you do the proper paperwork to submit it to the Rules Committee. And I think the last time I checked, Mr. Chairman, you expect the author of that bill to come to your committee and present the bill. That's our rules. That's how this House operates. That's how we operate with our friends on the other side of the chamber, on the other side of the building in the Senate. And we're going to work with them that way. We're not going to take any extra time with their bills. We're going to be proactive, and we're going to do just what we always do. We're going to tend to the people's business in this house. And if they send us a great idea, we might make it a little bit better, right? We might make it a little bit better. But we're going to move forward with their good ideas, and but they will have to comply with our process, and that's how we're going to conduct ourselves. That's how we're going to conduct the business of this house. And I know that the members of the Senate will certainly work with us on that. So I look forward to, and we have a technical issue that is completed, so we're ready to go. So we're going to take up another piece of business right here. Let's see. I want that. We're going to take up the local calendar now. For what purpose does Representative Reeves rise?
Mr. Speaker, may I make a request?
You may make a motion.
May I make a motion to remove House Bill 711, the Gwinnett County Homestead Bill, from today's calendar?
Representative Reeves has moved that House Bill 711 be removed from the local calendar and voted on later at another legislative day. Mr. Clerk, will you read the caption?
House Bill 711 by Representative Reeves of the 99th Gwinnett County, a bill to increase the homestead exemption from Gwinnett County School District ad valorem taxes.
On the gentleman's motion that HB 711 be removed from the local calendar and voted on a later legislative day, is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. We will now have third reading and passage of uncontested local bills. If there is no objection, we will vote on the local calendar as a whole with a recorded vote. Hearing none, it is so ordered. The clerk will read the local calendar.
House Bill 597 by Representative Bentley, the 150th City of Andersonville. House Bill 666 by Representative Jenkins of the 136th Town of Lone Oak. House Bill 695 by Representative Camp of the 135th City of Thomaston. House Bill 702 by Representative Westbrook of the 163rd Chatham County. House Bill 703 by Representative Westbrook of the 163rd City of Savannah. House Bill 708 by Representative Chastain of the 7th City of Ellijay. House Bill 709 by Representative Washburn of the 144th City of Forsyth.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, is there objection? on the local calendar. Yes, sir. Voting on the local calendar as a whole. The gentleman's objected to the local calendar. Does the gentleman move on the gentleman moves. Wilt Park, would you please clarify your objection? Is it to the calendar as a whole, to a specific bill on the calendar?
Mr. Speaker, I will waive my objection.
The gentleman has waived his objection. We will move on to voting on the local calendar as a whole. Thank you, Representative. Is there an objection to the previous question being ordered on the local calendar? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bills? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall these bills now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bills on the local calendar will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Representative Adenia, are you voting yes on this, voting green? If you are, I can have the clerk to register your vote in the machine until we repair your machine. The gentleman has indicated he will vote green on the local calendar. We will address your machine issues. The gremlins are here. I guess the leprechauns are in the building someplace. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of the bills on the local calendar, the ayes are 157, the nays 0. These bills, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. We're moving on to morning orders. Now, representatives, we have a long list of morning orders, and I've been very compliant with giving you all the time in the world, but today we're going to ask you to pay attention to the lights right in front of you. We'll give you adequate warning, but we need you to comply with a 1 minute time limit. 1 minute time limit. So we're going to start with Representative Amati Barnes for a morning order. Representative Barnes. Don't see Representative Barnes. Representative Sharper is recognized for a morning order.
And others. Thank you, Speaker.
And friends.
I'm going to try to be very, very brief. All right, let me see, okay. Did he leave out for a second? Okay. Okay. I think he's getting his mom. Okay. But first of all, I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Speaker. He's coming back in. But the person that we have here today is someone that everybody in this body should have some type of relationship with, that he can really help the individuals and the businesses in your districts. But we have today with us recognizing John Hope Bryant, the founder of the Operation Hope. And you guys have seen him on CNBC. You've seen him on several different television shows. You've seen him all over the world, all over the country. He's headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. Just a brief thing here. John Hope Bryant is an American entrepreneur. He's a thought leader and philanthropic leader who has been referred to as the conscience of capitalism by the CEOs of Delta Airlines, Walmart, First Republic Bank, and countless other businesses. So you guys, he's going to be here as soon as he come down from the gallery. He's going to be over in the room if you want to take a picture with him. We have a proclamation for him here, and he's joined also by his mom, Miss Juanita Smith, and his president, Brian Betts of Operation Hope, and a few other people. Y'all stand real quick. Y'all welcome him here, and then we're going to be going over to the side, okay? Thank y'all.
Thank you, Representative. We appreciate y'all's work. Thank you for being in the House today. Representative Al is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. Today we mark a sad anniversary. On the morning of March 16th, 2021, a man bought a gun and by that evening had used that gun to murder 8 people at 3 Asian-owned spas in the Atlanta area. Of those 8 murdered, 6 were Asian women. These are the names of those we lost that day. Sun Chung Park, Hyun Jung Grant, Sun Cha Kim, Yong A Yu, Xiao Jie Tan, Dao Yo Feng, Delania Yon Gonzalez, and Paul Andre Michaels. 2 of the family members of those that we lost on March 16th are here with us in the gallery today. I'd like to acknowledge them as we stand in their honor. May our memories of those we lost continue to be a blessing, and may the injustice of these senseless losses continue to fuel the change we need to see. Thank you. I yield the well.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, members. Representative Barnes, recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we continue International Women's Month, I would like to acknowledge one of my friends who inspires many women in our community and around the nation. She is a women's life coach. She is an entrepreneur, a mother, and a fighter for all the women in the community. She started the Lifestyle Exchange Program, which empowers women to find their purpose and continue to do great within our community. Today, she's in chambers with us, and I would like to acknowledge Ms. Kiana Williams. Thank you for your community service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Representative Davis is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask all the nurses, doctors, other healthcare professionals, and those who have nurses in your family to join me up here to celebrate nurses. Nurses are the frontline angels in healthcare. Nurses have been voted the most trusted, ethical profession for 21 years. Right now, our nurses are in the process of taking a picture with the governor, so I ask everyone to join me with celebrating today as Nurses Day at the Capitol. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Angela Moore is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, everyone. Well, Mr. Speaker,
Yes,
isn't
ma'am.
it true that today is my legislative anniversary? And as such, instead of going out into the community, I decided to make brunch for the Georgia General Assembly. I hope that you all will join me in the anteroom. I tried to make a healthy lunch for you. Please don't let it turn into dunch. We may need the pastor to pray because I thought that I was doing good, but in retrospect, it's just as worse as the donuts that you all eat every morning and the sugar you pour in your coffee. Lastly, I'd like to, and you didn't say something there, Speaker, but it is true, because the lady knows what she's talking about.
Lady has the well. Speak on.
And I'd like to thank the constituents of District 91 and District 90 for putting their faith and power in me to send me to the Georgia General Assembly to be with all these great people. Whether you all like it or not, I'm here to stay. Good morning and happy anniversary to me and District 91. And isn't that true?
Happy anniversary. I'm not going to sing, but obviously you were paying attention to the chaplain this morning, those comments. Thank you very much. Representative Roman is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Today is Muslim Advocacy Day at the Capitol. Just so you all know, the Muslim community is one of the most diverse communities in our country. Fun fact, although I am Arab, the majority of Muslims are not Arab, so here to blow your mind every single day. So please stop by the South Wing steps around 1 o'clock. They will be here to meet with you, talk to you at the ropes. I also want to ask my fellow community members to please stand so we can recognize you. Thank you so much for being here. Excited to talk to all of you. Yep. And we have a very special group of folks from a local mosque that our brother Farouk goes to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're recognizing Gwinnett Islamic Circle Swati Masjid. So Brother Tariq, Siddiqui, Khalid Daly, and Mansoor Alam, thank you so much for your contributions in Gwinnett County.
Thank you so much, and hope to see y'all later today.
Thank you, representatives, and welcome. Chairman Tyler Paul Smith is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm joined by my friends, Lauren McDonald, got old West Point grad over here too, and then Representative Franklin. But today we have with us a native son, Wiley McDonald, Lauren Wiley McDonald IV. And let me just tell you about this young man. He is a 3.7 GPA every semester he's been there, I believe, majoring in mechanical engineering. And he has just recently been recognized as the rising first sergeant for Papa Company over in 5th Battalion to go get that crazy bunch over there in 5th straightened out. So we just want to recognize Wiley today, the son of Lauren McDonald, our own. Wiley, thank you for making our state proud and standing in a long line of Georgia cadets that have attended the Citadel. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you, Karen.
Mighty proud of that young man.
Thank you.
Representative Lisa Campbell is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome all of my Cobb County colleagues to the dais this morning. This morning we are recognizing Kennesaw State University. They are here with us today. It's KSU Day at the Capitol. They have been serving breakfast and entertaining folks all morning. They may be here in the gallery. If so, I welcome them to stand. John Carson shared some information on all of our desks this morning about KSU, and I just want to say we are so proud of all of our students here, the Georgia Government Association, our honor students, and certainly our men's basketball team who will be going to the Final Four. First game tomorrow. So go Owls, hooty hoo. Please welcome KSU President Catherine Schwag, Casey Tanner, and all of our students here today who are doing such a wonderful job in their work and their studies and will be making wonderful contributions to Georgia in the future. Thank you.
Representative Hong is recognized for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm going to have my UGA friend, Vice Chair Gaines, up here as well. I have Professor Ju Young Kim with the UGA Cox Center, and along with him, we have 21 South Korean government officials as well as journalists that are studying here under the CAM Fellowship. So if you can help me welcome them, stand up. Thank you.
We're going to recognize our doctor today, and Representative Carolyn Hughley from over in Columbus is going to do that for us. Representative Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, it's my honor today to recognize our doctor of the day. She is Dr. Kamisha Harbison. And Dr. Harbison began her career in obstetrics and gynecology in 2013 after earning her Bachelor of Science and Master's of Arts undergraduate degrees from Xavier University, and she earned her Doctor of Medicine from University of Iowa at the Roy J. and Lucille A. Carver College of Medicine. Before she attended medical school, she was a teacher, and she spent many years teaching honors level biology and chemistry courses to high school students, as well as the physical exam skills to the second-year medical students. Outside of her career in medicine, Dr. Harbison is passionate about volunteering, mentoring young women, and reading. And I am so proud that she serves us at the Valley Healthcare System, which is one of our federal qualified health centers in Columbus. And I can't leave without telling you that she is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and the Lynx of Columbus, Georgia. And also, she is the daughter-in-law of our own senator, Senator Ed Harbison. So we're excited that she's here with you today. And, you know, I don't think men are going to be having many babies, but go by and see her anyway. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Hughley. Dr. Harbison, thanks for being here with us today and taking care of us. And go by and see her. I know she comes from a great family and doing great work over in the Columbus area. We have a special resolution. We'll invite Representative Becky Evans and her guests to come up for a special recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. First I want to say top of the morning to you. Yes, I know we'll be celebrating St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. But today I am pleased to honor MedShare, a humanitarian organization dedicated to improving the quality of life of people and our planet by sourcing and directly delivering surplus medical supplies and equipment to communities in need around the world. I had the privilege of touring the MedShare facility with Representative Regina Lewis Ward on Earth Day in 2021, and I was so impressed by all of these medical supplies that have been donated and delivered back out to needy organizations throughout the world. And actually, during COVID, they helped some Atlanta hospitals when our supply chain was so broken. So I'd like to recognize today, March 16th, 2023, as MedShare International Day at the State Capitol. And I would like now to introduce Mr. Charles Redding, who is the CEO of MedShare. Mr. Redding.
Thank you, Speaker. Yeah, thank you, Speaker and Representative Evans. Really appreciate it. Let me start by saying, first of all, I am a Georgia native son and a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech, so we'll get that out there. It is indeed an honor to accept this form of recognition. You know, Georgia is such a special place for us, and it's unfortunate the world today we live in, there's still a need for organizations like MedShare that stand to bridge the gap between surpluses need and make sure that people, vulnerable populations all around the world, including here in our community, have the tools they need to improve health outcomes. So thank you for declaring this day, MedShare International Day, and on behalf of our board, our staff, and the countless volunteers that help make our organization special, we just want to say a hearty thank you to all of you, and thank you for the great work that you're doing. It's really, really appreciated, so thank you.
We appreciate what MedShare is doing, and we appreciate y'all being here. And thank you, Representative Evans, for bringing this resolution. House will come to order. We will allow our guests to enter the South Ante room. If you would like to visit with our guest, you feel so led, please join them for a photo in the South Ante room. That completes our morning orders and our special resolutions. We're going to move on to the rules calendar. We'll move on to the rules calendar. We're ready to move on to the rules calendar. We're going to take up a bill that's on your supplemental rules calendar. It's on your desk, the supplemental rules calendar. Mr. Clerk, will you read the caption to SB 140?
SB 140 by Senator Summers of the 13th and others, being titled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 7 to Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to regulation of hospitals and related institutions so as to prohibit certain surgical procedures for the treatment of gender dysphoria in minors from being performed in hospitals and other licensed healthcare facilities. This bill having referred to the Committee on Public Health. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Members, if you will take your seats and cease conversation and give your attention to the gentleman in the well, Chairman Bonner is recognized to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, colleagues. I rise today to present Senate Bill 140. So I grew up in the mid-70s and 80s. I'm one of 4 brothers. When I reflect back on my childhood, it was pretty good. I have very fond memories. We played sports, we fished, we rode bikes, we spent time outside. We knew it was time to come home when the streetlights came on. Maybe some of you can relate to that. I'm now a father of 4, 2 boys and 2 girls. Friends, I'm here today to tell you something that you already know. The world in which we are raising our children today is not the same world as the one we grew up in. There was no social media growing up. If you wanted to know what was happening in Fayetteville, you'd go to the local beauty salon, or you'd go down to Malier's Barbecue on a Saturday morning, and you'd get the scoop on everyone. Smartphones didn't exist. But today, our kids are constantly bombarded by confusion and noise. As a youth pastor friend of mine said, the issues we dealt with in our 20s are issues that our kids are having to deal with as early as age 8 to 12. As parents, our role is to help our kids navigate through the confusion of growing up in a society that is often over-sexualized and wants to place children in situations to make adult decisions they are not capable of processing. As legislators, we are charged with protecting our most vulnerable population in the state. Senate Bill 140 does just that by establishing guardrails to ensure that children struggling with identity issues are not rushed into decisions that would alter their bodies forever. The bill prohibits medical providers from performing surgery or prescribing hormone therapy for the purposes of altering the sex of anyone under the age of 18. I say again, anyone under the age of 18. If there is a valid reason to prescribe the hormones or perform a surgery for any reason other than altering the sex characteristics, the bill allows it. Violating this statute will result in sanctions from the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners or the Department of Community Health, including the loss of a physician's license. Without question, those who struggle with issues of identity to include gender dysphoria deserve our compassion and our care. No one denies this. As a state, we have made significant investments in mental health care, and I pray we continue to support any effort to deliver the appropriate care to those whose judgment isn't fully formed. In limiting these irreversible procedures for minors, we're not only joining at least 8 other states in the U.S., but other countries such as England, Finland, and Sweden. Now, opponents of the bill will make the claim that what we're doing is inconsistent with what we believe the role of a parent to be. But I would submit that SB 140 is completely consistent with our duty to protect minors. We limit the age for all sorts of activities and behaviors in Georgia: alcohol, tattoos, purchase of a firearm, driving, etc. The list goes on. Opponents also reference a medically accepted standard of care. The fact of the matter is that there is no consensus. And finally, opponents of the bill assert that we are criminalizing health care. This could not be further from the truth. We are simply establishing in statute what is legally permitted. Anyone in the state of Georgia who violates the law is and should be subject to those consequences. Senate Bill 140 seeks to strike the balance between providing proper level of care with the fundamental principle found in the Hippocratic Oath: do no harm. I believe this bill does that in a way that recognizes fully the reality of the world our children live in today, while preventing a decision that can cause irrevocable harm. With that, Mr. Speaker, I know there are a lot of speakers to the bill. I'll stand for a few questions.
The gentleman has yielded for questions. You do have a few questions. Let me see. In fact, you have a lot of questions. Chair recognizes Representative Roberts for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
I do.
This bill sets a dangerous precedent of overruling medical standards of care established by respected medical organizations. Will this body next regulate chemotherapy, heart transplants, MRIs?
Is that a question to me, Representative?
Sure.
So I would say we will do whatever the body chooses to do. I will state that it wasn't too many years ago that I believe it was House Bill 569 that was introduced by members of this body that regulated the use of conversion therapy for those under 18. So it does seem as though that there is some appetite to tell medical providers what to do.
Gentleman, further yield?
I do.
Representative Chokas is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Thank you for bringing this legislation forward. And we were talking about the age appropriate and putting guardrails on it. Isn't it true that it is illegal in the state of Georgia to sell alcohol to a minor and also to sell cigarettes to a minor?
The gentleman knows of what he speaks.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. Speaker, since there are those that want to speak to the bill, I will yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Now, we do have a number of speakers signed up to speak to the bill. This morning, per our rules, the rule that was adopted in the Rules Committee this morning, that we have 30 minutes for those in favor of the bill and 30 minutes for those that are opposed to the bill. So what we're going to do, we're going to set the timer on 30 minutes, and we're going to start this begin this discussion. I'll recognize those opposed to the bill, and your time is to be distributed amongst the members opposing the bill. So I'll just say to you all, you'll make your own judgment on how much time you want to speak and how much time you want to leave for your fellow representatives. So at this time, I will recognize Representative Roman to speak to the bill. Representative Roman. The lady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering why someone like me would speak out against this bill, particularly because my community is relatively conservative on these issues. But I'm here once again to talk about unintended consequences because apparently that's been my brand around here. There has been an increase in bills targeting this community. While I'm sure many of you have the best intentions, the unintended consequences are far too severe. And there will be those that will share way more facts about that and have more expertise on this than I do. But I'm here to tell you that a lot of these bills right now focus on medical issues had started in other places related to sports. Then there was messaging about what people are wearing and who's wearing what and who's dressing how and what they're putting on their birth certificates. And the not so fun fact is, I went through that as a kid. I was told as a child what I can and cannot wear while playing sports because people were too concerned about what was on my head. And those same laws and rules were then used last year on trans kids. So I know that not a single one of you thought about someone like me when passing bills like this, but I can tell you right now that's where they started. And I'm here to implore you because I've spoken to a lot of you, and I know that you have the best intentions at heart, but the unintended consequences of this kind of legislation will have terrible impacts on the kids that you are trying to protect. Because their parents know them better than any of us can and will. And it does not make sense that for those of us that have never spoken to those kids, that have never sat down with those kids, that have never heard those kids, make laws about those kids. And so I'm here to implore you, please reconsider this bill and look at the potential unintended consequences and what it is setting up for future legislation and how it can impact other people. Thank you. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Representative Hutchinson is recognized to speak to the bill. The lady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, colleagues, I rise as a member of the mental health profession. The bill today, one of the premises is that there's a rise of cases of trans kids in this state, and that is true. And the reason for that is trans kids are 7 times more likely to commit suicide. 7 times. There's no other population with that kind of statistic, none. That means if in Gwinnett County we had 100 kids to commit suicide, we could have 700, 700, just because they're going through a clinical treatment plan developed with their mental health professional and their parents. The cases are going up because we are recognizing them. We are hearing them, we're talking to them, and they know that we see them. They know that they can get help from us, and they feel comfortable slowly but surely coming to us when they're thinking of harming themselves. This is a win for the mental health community. This is a win. But this bill would set us back decades. We're talking about 7 times the amount of kids, children, lives that we're supposed to protect. 7 times more likely to kill themselves. Kill themselves. That is really irreversible. And I bet you've asked any parent if they would risk their child having a permanent change in who they are as a person, they would take that over their child being dead any day of the week. Mr. Speaker, I yield the will.
Representative Park Cannon is recognized to speak to the bill. The lady is recognized.
Members, I come today to ask you to reconsider your position if you're supporting this bill and to vote in opposition. I'm asking you, as a person in this body who loves someone, who is transgender, who transitioned as a child, and who is a state of Georgia employee. I'm also asking you, because I have a staff member who's watching right now, who transitioned as a child here in Georgia and is thriving. In fact, she's the reason why I serve my caucus as a secretary. I'm here to talk to you about research as well. There are some perceptions about trans people that I really think that we need to look at. We've had a survey of voters in Georgia. It's not an old survey. It took place this week. You want to know the perceptions of Georgians right now who are voters as you're voting on this bill? Well, this is how it went. 40% of the respondents were called on the phone. The phone, the same phone that you probably call them on. Those 40% were then matched to their voter files to make sure that they were who they said they were, and they lived in the districts that they said that they lived in. Your districts, our districts, all across the state. They then weighted the results by gender, by age, by race. And they did this precisely to make sure that the credibility interval, which is the theoretical margin of error, was plus or minus 4.4%. The results, only a quarter would support this bill. 2/3 oppose this bill. In fact, the opposition was actually very strong. 58% strongly disagreed to the bill. The opposition to Senate Bill 140 is bipartisan. It makes up 70% Democrats. There are 60% of the participants who were independents, and 59% were Republican. I thought it was so interesting that they were able to target deeply in North Georgia. 62%, meaning 6 out of 10 North Georgians who they polled, who were Republicans and Democrats, opposed this policy. I thought it was so interesting because 62% in North Georgia. So what is it in Atlanta? About 70%. we're not as far apart on this issue because we understand how nuanced it is. This bill does not allow for the nuances that happen in gender affirming care. So I'm here to talk to you about that today. It's the first bill of the day. We're really in no rush. And this really matters to people who need it. So what happens when someone is a child and their gender identity is forming? Is it swayed by makeup and beauty pageants, where they're forced to go perform on stage and smile and move their bodies in ways that are not really natural? Or is it that kids find themselves talking to their preschool teachers when they're outside playing with the boys and the girls, and they might say, "I'm not a boy, I'm not a girl. Don't call me that." This is why educators have continued to start using gender-neutral phrases for their class. All the preschool teachers in here, like myself, will know we say, "Hey friends, hey everyone, let's line up together." We don't do gender-based teaching anymore. The reason why is because that gender identity formation, which is a social construct that can reinforce your genes, your sex, can be reinforced by medicine. I know deeply the people who this bill will impact. They're the same people who have called and emailed you and have gotten no responses. It's not right. We don't even have a single transgender elected official in the state house or Senate, and yet we're setting policy. In the Senate, we have someone who has a transgender child, and we did not listen to her on this bill. We all received this letter. 500 medical professionals who have said that they are opposed to this bill. This impacts their practice. But in the committee instead, one person of medical experience spoke who does not serve any gender affirming clients. 0 she could not speak to. What's going to be the impact of this bill? I want to show you. Do you know what this is? These are black market drugs for gender affirming care. This is what parents will have to start giving their children. Similar to the THC issue we had here, where we were all so concerned about parents trying to help their kids through medical instances who needed support, instead of having to travel state lines, go on the black market, order, and get it in black bags. This, you have to break this. It is glass. It can be contaminated easily. You then have to inject with this. This is what we should be giving our students, our kids that need the support past the hormone blockers. This is given by a provider, a supportive provider. It has a prescription. It has information about what it does, not this. I am begging you today, please consider voting no on Senate Bill 140. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded well. Representative Al is recognized to speak to the bill.
Good morning again, colleagues. So I rise to speak against SB 140. This bill would make it illegal to perform some forms of gender-affirming care to transgender and gender-diverse children in the state of Georgia, in conflict with the health policy guidelines set by the American Academy of Pediatrics, among many other medical societies. The Georgia State Legislature should not be in the practice of dictating or restricting the standards of care determined by those who actually care for patients. If, for example, the legislature drafted a bill restricting prescription of certain chemotherapy agents for cancer treatment, or started passing guidelines for perioperative approaches to treatment for acute appendicitis, we would all clearly understand that to be ludicrous. Because why should politicians be able to pass laws that supersede established medical care standards? And what patient would prefer their medical care be dictated by a politician rather than a doctor? Further, there was an amendment introduced to SB 140 in committee, which would create a cause of action where doctors could be held civilly or criminally liable for caring for transgender and gender-diverse children according to the standards of care under which we are ethically obligated to practice. Simply put, SB 140 amounts to state-mandated malpractice. I am enraged and dismayed that this bill passed out of a committee on which I serve, despite the best efforts of my colleagues to speak logic to absurdity and apply scientific rigor and data to anecdotal evidence and conjecture. I want to acknowledge the families, activists, and allies for continuing to work with us to defeat this bill. We continue to see you and stand with you and fight by your side. And I hope a majority of the members of this body will join me in voting no. Thank you. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Representative Holcomb is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm probably an unlikely person to speak about this bill. I'm a straight white male, don't have a lot of understanding about this issue, and I'll admit that. Probably for some of you, this is an issue that's somewhat challenging and for which you don't have any personal experience. But I'm troubled by it. And I think those that are proponents of this bill believe that it will, or is consistent with the medical principle of do no harm. And those of us that oppose it see it exactly the opposite, is that we think that this bill will, in fact, do real harm to some of our most vulnerable citizens. I don't know how or why transgender individuals have become a political punching bag, but they have. I think that's wrong. And with respect to the specific issues, you've heard some of the scientific reasons and the medical reasons to oppose this bill, and I certainly agree with those, and I appreciate my colleagues for bringing those forward. I want to just share with you, and I really try not to make policy making through anecdote, but I will share with you a little bit of an anecdote on this issue. One of my law school classmates is transgender, and I watched her transition over the last few years, and I was surprised by it, and I think a lot of our classmates were surprised by it, but I immediately reached out and said, I was your friend before, I'm your friend today, I'll be your friend tomorrow. And watching that process was remarkably eye-opening, and again, it was the first time that I had experienced it in this way, and it was unbelievably difficult. People were not kind. There's a lot of name-calling, a lot of nastiness, and what I saw was, her name is Anne. Anne wasn't doing this to make anybody else feel uncomfortable. She was doing it to make herself feel more comfortable. And one of the things that we do here is we try to make good decisions, and we try to help our citizens make good decisions. But I'll submit to you that one of the best decisions that we can make sometimes is for us not to be the ones making those decisions and those choices. And I really believe that this is an area that the state of Georgia should stay out of. It's a very difficult issue. It's one that we should let our doctors work with the parents, work with the children that are affected, give them the best treatment possible. And as you heard, what we're going to legislatively mandate and criminalize is a standard of care that is malpractice. And that is wrong. That is wrong. And looping back to the issue of do no harm, I want to just emphasize that a little bit more. These children are really vulnerable. Their lives are not easy. We're going to make their lives even more difficult. And I really do fear that we may lose some lives by passing this. Not save lives, but lose lives. And that should give everyone pause to really think about what we're doing. So I'm sorry my thoughts weren't better formulated. I really wasn't prepared to speak about this today. But I am extraordinarily troubled by this bill, and I would encourage those of you that are thinking about voting for it to please reconsider and to vote no. Thank you. I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Representative Crawford is recognized to speak to the bill. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, this morning I rise to oppose Senate Bill 140. There's so many thoughts that come through my mind, but let me first say that I'm deeply honored to be a member of this distinguished body. And even though I am a young freshman within this distinguished body, I've learned and grown so much just from being close in proximity to all of you. I've had the opportunity to learn about areas in the state that I honestly didn't know existed before being in this distinguished body. And so I thank you for that. And what I've learned is that we may have many differences, we may have different opinions, we may have different values, but we grow together because of our conversations, because of our interactions. But sometimes we may differ on how we come about to different policies. You may vote one way, I may vote another. Sometimes we vote particular ways because of fears, sometimes the lack of knowledge that we may have. I am not a doctor. I am not a transgender. But because I am not a doctor and I'm not a transgender, if I'm going to vote on legislation, I try to do my research. And it is my belief, my opinion, that this bill is being voted on based upon some of our fears. In an effort to ensure that I have the best information possible when making my vote, I did a little research. The fact is this: if we vote for this bill as a body, this bill will severely limit necessary and sometimes life-saving health care for transgender youth. We are going to negatively impact the lives of so many people in our districts and in our state because of whatever fears you may have about transgenders. Fact. Gender dysphoria, like other medical conditions is best treated with collaboration among a multidisciplinary team of healthcare professionals and parents and guardians. It was mentioned earlier from the well that doctors, and to see that we have some in our gallery, must take a Hippocratic oath. I didn't really know what was in that oath, and so, again, I wanted to do a little research. In the modern oath, it says, and I quote, "I will not be ashamed to say, I know not, nor will I fail to call in my colleagues when the skills of another are needed." I think that's important because, again, gender dysphoria is something that needs multidisciplinary attention. And so now we as a body, a very distinguished body, that has less than 3% doctors are going to now vote on a bill that's going to have such a negative impact. We are not doctors. We're lawmakers. And even though we're different, the one thing that does hold us together is the oath, like the Hippocratic oath, that we took as a body. And within that oath, we said that we are going to ensure that we follow this Constitution, the Constitution of the United States as well, and that we will ensure that we act in a way for the betterment of not only the citizens, but the prosperity of this state. Voting in favor of this bill would make us hypocrites. Voting in favor of this bill would not be for the betterment of this state and the citizens within. But another fact, voting in favor of this bill would actually be against the United States Constitution. Our neighbors, Alabama, tried to implement a bill called the Alabama Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act. That bill was going to try to limit how parents could treat their children, just as this bill is doing. And the court in Alabama, the Northern District Court, relied on a Supreme Court decision. Actually, they relied on Supreme Court decisions. And what this court said is that even though sometimes medications and sometimes procedures may be risky, what's most important is that a parent should have the ability to determine what is best for their child. That is one of the oldest rights in this country. This bill makes no exception for that. What this bill does say is that an operation can be done if it is deemed to be medically necessary. Well, then I ask you, what is medically necessary? We've heard people come to this well before me and discuss that there are young people that are probably going to take their lives because of some of the issues that they may face. I'm going to ask you to oppose this bill and vote no for this bill, because doing so will save multiple lives. I'm going to leave with this. This morning, on the 35th day of our legislative schedule, the pastor says, your family deserves your best. The greatest gift that you can give is the best version of you. That right should be enjoyed by everyone, transgender, not transgender. Allow parents to make the decision. I urge you to vote against this bill. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well. Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Representative Draper is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today as a parent to oppose SB 140. I know that if I were to ask all of you if you think you can make the best decision for your child, every one of you would say yes. Let's trust the rest of Georgia parents to do the same. Those are not my words. Those are the words of a colleague on the other side of the aisle in the Senate. And while he wasn't talking about SB 140, the sentiment is equally applicable here. Most of us who are parents, regardless of which side of the aisle we find ourselves, want the freedom to make decisions for our families and for our children. I know I do. Indeed, many of you in this chamber have said as much. You have declared that it is a parent's right to make decisions about where their children go to school, which books they read, and which subjects they study. And I suspect that there is not one parent in this chamber that doesn't believe that he or she should be the one to make critical health care decisions in consultation with qualified medical professionals for their minor children. And yet SB 40 attempts to substitute the judgment of the state for that of the parents of some of our most vulnerable children, those who identify as transgender. That is wrong, and it is not what this body should stand for. We know that gender-affirming care is critical for our transgender youth. We all know that mental health is a critical issue among Georgia's young people, and trans youth are at even greater risk for mental health issues, including an increased risk of suicide. Studies show that 56% of trans youth have reported suicide attempts, and some 86% have reported considering suicide. Not surprisingly, studies also show that transgender youth who receive age-appropriate, gender-affirming care report lower rates of suicide and depression, and specifically for children under the age of 18, receiving gender-affirming health care was associated with a nearly 40% reduction of depression and a recent suicide attempt. LGBTQ+ children, and in particular trans and gender-diverse children, are not born more prone to suicide than others, nor are they inherently more likely to develop serious mental illness as they grow up. I think that's a really important point. They're not more prone to this. Trans children are at a higher risk for suicide and mental illness because of bills like SB 140 that take away their agency and ability to live freely and authentically. Gender nonconforming children die every year because of policies that force them to live in shame and self-hatred.
The lady's time has expired. She has 20 seconds to complete.
Let me speak from the heart here. As a parent, you do not have the choice to say whether your child is tall or short. You do not have the choice to say what color their eyes are. You do not have the choice over whether your child is a boy or a girl or some way in between. When you choose to be a parent, though, the most important thing that you can do is love your child. And loving your child means standing up for them and ensuring they get the care they need in whatever form that takes.
The lady's time has expired.
I implore you, please oppose this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. That's 30 minutes for those opposed to the bill. Now we will hear up to 30 minutes for those in favor of the bill. Representative Will Wade is recognized to speak to the bill. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. I come to you as a father, a colleague, and a former school board member who has spent the greater part of my adult life focused on protecting children and serving them to the best of my ability. Governor Kemp and this House have a steadfast history and record of protecting children. You know, childhood as Americans know it today seems to be a fairly new concept. We've gone from seeing our early years as a time of learning, work, and even starting families to a time of learning and play. We have a much greater understanding now of our minds and how they develop with age. We know now that our brains aren't fully formed when when we become teenagers or legal adults at 18. For most people, it's in their early to mid-20s. Even our youngest members have lived through those years and can look back and recognize the path of their own maturity. Even then, it's often in our 30s that people begin to really understand who they are. Listen, there are many ways that we protect children during this time of development. It's crucial. We know how much change and how many phases they'll go through because we've lived those years, and because many of us, we live it again with our own children. No matter how each of you vote today on this legislation, I have no doubt that every single one of you is acting in this belief, or maybe just hope that it serves the best interests of children. We share a concern about kids facing mental health challenges in this state. This body has made great strides to that effort. We want them to feel love and understanding, not fear or isolation. For kids experiencing these feelings, I want to make sure they have access to high-quality mental health services. I want them to have counseling, and I think we should start with gender-confirming care. The idea that a child's declaration of their gender identity should clear any obstacles to irreversible gender transition surgery stems more extreme political orthodoxy than from what's in the best interest, the long-term interest of the child. Over the next decade, I expect we will see gender dysphoria is based on fluid beliefs. Gender itself is not fluid. It is a biological fact. Nothing in this legislation stops an adult from pursuing a different lifestyle based on their feelings. We must draw a line for the long-term protection of children. Opponents of this legislation suggest that these treatments are a cure-all, delivering them to their true and proper destiny. But many of these procedures and treatment can actually bring physical problems, such as causing bone density issues, as well as short-term and long-term mental health concerns like anxiety and even worsened depression. We know that many who go through these surgeries regret it shortly after, and even sometimes later in life when they decide that they want to become parents. The fact is, there is no cure-all. These are complex issues, and we're all unique. I'm voting yes today because I believe that childhood is about giving young people time to develop and letting them learn by trial and error, but while still protecting them from long-term harms. It is our job as legislators and as parents to use our accrued wisdom to guide them on the right path so that at some point in their journey, they're able to make good and right decisions for themselves on their own. I ask you to vote yes in the interest of protecting children. Thank you very much. I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Representative Earhart is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise in support of SB 140 and speak to you both as your colleague and, more importantly, as a mother that raised 4 children and understands the driving and inherent desire to protect our children from all forms of danger. The danger that exists in simply crossing the road, and the danger that exists down the road, often as a consequence of the decisions our children make today. SB 140 is about protecting Georgia children from being sterilized and surgically altered by irreversible experimental medical procedures. This bill safeguards children who struggle with a mental health disorder known as pediatric gender dysphoria. It protects them from receiving dangerous drugs and irreversible surgeries to induce cosmetic changes in their appearances. This is a balanced bill that approaches the issue with 3 things: compassion for the struggles that some of our youth face, an understanding of the limits that children have to understand long-term consequences, and finally, an acknowledgement that once adulthood is reached, they will be more likely to have the cognitive ability to make an informed decision, whether it be to transition or not. As a parent, it concerns me to know that there is no long-term study, not one, to show that these interventions are safe and effective for use in children struggling with gender dysphoria. Additionally, there is reliable medical concern that these treatments pose irreversible consequences to children's health, up to and including sterilization. This is one of the more disturbing realities for children who receive cross-sex hormones long-term, a loss of fertility. This is proven, and it's irreversible. Unfortunately, I've not heard one speaker today who's speaking in opposition to this bill address the fact that by sexually transitioning children, those same children are then deprived of the right and ability to bear their own biological children later in the future. The truth is that hormone treatments on children are experimental, and no one knows the full extent of the medical or psychological impact of the life-altering sex reassignment surgeries. Ask any parent if they would condone giving a child a drug that is not approved by the FDA, and they would likely say no. And yet none of these medications addressed here today are FDA approved for the condition of pediatric gender dysphoria. And none have undergone rigorous FDA safety evaluations for this purpose. So what happens to these children when adults do not interfere medically with their natural development? There have been studies on this issue. 11 studies to be exact, 3 large and 8 small studies with a combined total of 4,000 subjects. In these studies, when young gender dysphoric children were not subjected to procedures like those prohibited in this bill, but instead were supported in their natural bodies through puberty, these studies show that as many as 95% of the children reverted back to their natural bodies by the time they reached adulthood. The common course is for most young children to outgrow conflicting gender identity by adulthood. But what if they've been administered synthetic hormones for years? What if their bodies have been permanently surgically altered? What does that mean for them? What does it mean for me and you as parents? It means we've taken away that child's ability to change his mind or her mind. Parents often wonder how our children will reflect on the decisions they make later in life, in adulthood, and an increasing number of young adults in the U.S. are expressing painful regret for undergoing these interventions as teens that have forever impacted their health, appearance, fertility, and sexual function. These young adults are called detransitioners. You may have heard of them. And they represent a growing and increasingly vocal group of thousands across this country and Europe. They've formed associations, support groups, and nonprofit organizations. They are sounding the warning bell that some trans adults will come to regret the permanent decisions they're making in their youth. As a parent and a former teenager myself, I know firsthand that permanent life-altering decisions may seem rational, very rational, in the mind of a 15-year-old, but not so much in the mind of an adult with a fully formed frontal lobe and the cognitive ability to finally understand the permanence of one's actions. Some parents and physicians have been misled, and I know that as a parent, this perhaps is one of the scariest things of all, is the thought that our child might be driven to take their own life. Some parents and physicians have been misled to believe that their children and patients will be at greater risk for suicide without these interventions. There is no scientific evidence to support this claim. I know we have well-meaning colleagues here who laid papers on our desk this week citing a study that looked at suicide rates for the 12 months, only the 12 months following sexual transition. But in truth, there is only one long-term follow-up study on the subject of suicide, and it found that adults who took hormones and underwent sex reassignment surgery had substantially higher rates of mortality, suicide attempts, and psychiatric hospitalizations. Increasing suicides began to manifest 5 to 8 years after transition, not in the first 12 months. The treatment of suicidal tendencies among trans youth, just as with all other population groups, must include psychotherapy, compassion, and support. We know this as legislators. We know this as parents. Other scientific reviews have reached similar conclusions. In a thorough governmental review of all the scientific literature, an assessment by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, was conducted under the Obama administration. After extensive review, CMS concluded, and I quote, "There is not enough high-quality evidence to determine whether gender reassignment surgery improves health outcomes." A comprehensive 2019 review by the British Medical Journal described medications used for gender dysphoria as being, quote, in the context of profound scientific ignorance. The review concluded that current evidence does not support informed decision-making and safe practices in children. In closing, I'd like you to hear the words of a fellow Georgian who is a detransitioned man. He says, "I was told that my transgender feelings were permanent, immutable, physically deep-seated in my brain, and could never change, and that was the only way I could ever find peace was to transition to female. The problem is," he says, "I don't have those feelings anymore." Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to support the health, safety, and long-term well-being of our children by granting them the protections found in SB 140. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. We do have a minority report. Is there any objections to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. We do have a minority report. We will hear for a total of 20 minutes, and then we'll have 20 minutes for the chairman's time. We'll move on to the minority report. Whip Park is recognized to present the minority report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise to strongly oppose SB 140. This is a bill that will do an incredible amount of harm. Unfortunately, I think what you heard from the previous speaker was a lot of disinformation. I know that y'all think, and I know that a lot of Republican members think, that what y'all are doing is protecting children. The truth of the matter is that you are not protecting children by passing this bill. You are inflicting harm. You are inflicting harm on the children of Georgia by voting for this bill. Now, what's the impetus for this? We know that this is a bill that polls with 80% favorability in Republican districts. That's heartbreaking to me. How many times do we come to this floor and hear the good word about loving your neighbor? I've been taught that you know a tree by its fruit. It doesn't matter what the intent is. What matters is the effect, the outcome. So many people who understand this issue know that it will cause harm. We are telling you that it will cause harm. But if you pass this bill, know that it is not to protect the children. Know that you are passing this bill in your political self-interest, to rile up your base. Don't deceive yourself on this bill. It's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. We have the ability in this body to do so much good. We've found common ground, and we've moved this state forward on so many issues. We don't need this far-right culture war to continue to divide us. Why are we attacking one another? Why are we attacking the most vulnerable among us? We are better than this. We owe it to the next generation to do better than this. The evidence is clear. The science is clear. Politicians should not be substituting their personal opinion for that of doctors, for that of peer-reviewed studies when it comes to this issue. So I strongly urge you to vote no to SB 140. Vote no to protect the lives of some of the most vulnerable citizens in your state who you are commanded to love. Love is dead without deeds. I hope that each of my members demonstrate their true faith by demonstrating love to their neighbors, love to those that you may not understand, and vote no to this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Representative Anulowicz is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise before you today to speak against SB 140. The Georgia Supreme Court has held for nearly 40 years, and this is a quote, "The beginning presumption is that the parent has the child's best interest at heart." They continue that medical decision-making is a constitutional right which is not lost because of the incompetence or the youth of the patient. We have affirmed in this General Assembly, we have codified into law legislation that has decreed that the parents are the ultimate authority to determine whether and when their children receive vaccines, whether and when their children can wear a mask amidst a pandemic, whether and when their children can learn about dark, tricky, complicated, confusing moments in our history. We have affirmed in this chamber that parents have that authority. To that end, people have stated in this chamber, parents have the right to make decisions about their children's health care without interference from the government. We have declared in this chamber, parents are the first and most important teachers in a child's life, and they should have the freedom to choose the educational path that fits their child's needs. A question I asked in committee that was not answered, and a question I put forth before each of you today is what makes this different? In committee and here in this chamber, we have heard examples given about tattoos, drinking alcohol, firearms. Paul Harvey would say, here's the rest of the story, and I'm going to tell you right now the rest of the story. Those things, tattoos, you can get a tattoo if you're a minor with the consent of your parents. Alcohol, you can consume in your home with the consent of your parents. A firearm, your parent may absolutely give you a firearm to do something legal. And if a child does something illegal, we have also determined that yes, 17-year-olds should not be tried as adults. And I will tell you, I doubt very many of those 17-year-olds who are deciding to commit a crime are making that decision with the consultation of their parents and their physicians. Yet what we are talking about today, the decisions these families are making, are not done on a whim. They're not done because a child has declared they are one gender or another. They are done after heart-wrenching, anguish, confusing decisions. Trust me, if you think the issue of transgender youth is confusing for you, imagine what it is like for the families who are going through this. Imagine what it is like for these parents. We are being intellectually inconsistent. We are being inconsistent from a policy basis. I urge you to vote against this bill, and to the children out there and to their families who know that they are being discussed in such an intimate way, know that you are loved. Know that you are valued. Know that you matter and your life matters to everyone who loves you. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Representative Lim is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gender-affirming care helped me come out of what my mom called a hibernation. It was like I awoke and it was spring. As a trans person, I've seen trans children who could not swim in public, couldn't feel safe in a bathroom, couldn't look in the mirror or record their voice, and then they received this care, and that all changed. It's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. We should care for trans children because they are in our districts, in our schools, in our military, in our families, whether we know it or not, and they are in Georgia's future because the future belongs to them too. My son is healthy and happy because of his hormone replacement therapy. Not having access would have been devastating for him. I don't want this to be the experience for other children. I wanted to read just a few short words directly from trans youth and their parents in response to this bill, because whether we agree with them or not, and even regardless of how you vote on this bill, it's important for us not to let any paternalistic instincts, whatever motivates those instincts, erase their voices, their experiences, their intelligence and autonomy, consulting with healthcare professionals, people who seek not to harm others or even impose their views on others, but only to live and flourish in their own human existence as they aspire to live and flourish. So I hope not only as you vote, but long after that you take time to reflect directly on their words. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Representative Olaleye is recognized to speak to the bill. The representative is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Today, I rise in opposition to SB 140, but more importantly, I speak to you all as a parent. And I'm scanning the room, the chamber this morning, and I see the eyes, and I'm looking into the eyes of parents and grandparents. My son is 1.5 years old, my son August. He has curly hair, he has a wide smile, goofy personality. You don't get to choose your child. You don't get to choose their gender, how tall they are, if they're gay, straight, transgender. The only thing that you can choose as a parent is how you show up for them, how you love on them. My son, if he cried, if he falls, there's not anything I would do to run to his aid and care for him. There's nothing that you would do in this room. There's no mountain you wouldn't move to love on, to support, to provide the necessary care for your child. We cannot deny our parents, your friends, your neighbors, your loved ones, the right to love on and care for their children, especially minors. When we're talking about how critical it is for a young person. It's not just about development, it's not just about learning. We're talking about life or death. And even if it's one child, even if it's one parent, even if it's one time, we cannot deny parents the right to love on and care for and provide for their children. So again, colleagues, please, I urge you, please oppose 140. Do not deny parents the right to love on and care for their children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Representative Amadi Barnes is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak against SB 140. As I stand here today, I represent many different demographics. I represent being a 20-year-plus scientist. I represent a person who is in the dissertation phase of my public health PhD. And I said all that to say I analyze things differently, and I analyze and make decisions with facts, data, and the well-being of our public's health in mind. And so I'm asking you to oppose this bill with the public's health, our Georgia's public's health in mind. Putting the public's health at the forefront looks like voting no for SB 140 and coming back to the table with other solutions like mental health programs for trans kids, safe spaces for trans kids, community support programs for trans kids that will further decrease the suicide rates. By voting yes on this bill, we will increase the suicide rates. And those are facts with proven data. So I ask that this body look at the facts, the data, and the well-being of our public's health when making this decision. And I want to leave you with, what if your kid came to you and said they were trans? What if your kid or your grandchild came to you with that and you voted yes on this bill? How would you feel? To all the trans community out there, the trans kids and the parents with trans children, I want you guys to be strong. And in the event that this bill does pass, reach out to community services and programs that will help you support your trans child. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Representative Drenner is recognized to speak to the bill. Representative Drenner, you have about 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I am so sad today. I've been here 23 years. I was the first openly gay state representative in the South. I have bear witness to lots of bills over the years that have impacted the LGBTQ community. The Boy Scouts, Gay Straight Alliances, a film called That's Elementary, the marriage fight, and now today we're talking about kids. If my phone rang right at this minute and somebody said, something has happened to my child, I would leave immediately. I have been blessed to have 4 children. My children are the most important thing in my life. Does that make me a bad person? Because my children are the most important thing in my life. What you are talking about today is somebody's child. They're children. You are telling these parents that they are bad parents because they want to take care of their children. In committee, I'm just kind of mortified by the findings section of this bill. There's absolutely no academic rigor associated with anything in these findings. The intent of the bill to help kids. It's like the kids are just gonna walk into the doctor's office and say, hey, please do this to me. Where are the parents? I believe that you mean well, but this is wrong. To all the children in our state that are going to be negatively impacted, please don't lose hope. Please don't give up. Please don't kill yourself. This world is worth it. We need you. Please don't vote for this bill. Thank you. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. We'll move on to the chair's time now. We'll recognize the vice chair of the committee from which this legislation came, Vice Chair Washburn. 20 minutes, Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the chairman's time to Chairman Mark Newton.
Chairman Newton is recognized to speak to the bill. He has up to 20 minutes during the chair's time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I've heard the compassion. I know in the committee meeting as well, I've heard the compassion that so many of us bring to so many issues in this chamber, but in particular, issues that affect children, from adoption reform, which has been a key effort, both of Speaker Ralston, Representative Burt Reeves, and many others in this. Improvements for foster care that we're working on now, including care even after age 18, because we realize just because a child turns 18 doesn't mean they're really fully prepared to make adult decisions. But foster care has been a tremendous effort in this body and very important to our role as legislators. I've heard several rationales why this legislature should not intervene in what may be going on in some very challenging situations. I guess 3 of them that I've heard is there's some respected organizations that think it's a good thing to do, that we should not get between doctors and patients, and that the data is convincing. So I want to, if you don't mind, just bring what I think are some additional facts that'll help us make what's called an informed decision on Senate Bill 140. And we all know, and have heard it here today, the first mantra of medical school that a lot of us heard was first do no harm. So regarding trusted organizations, they often do mean well, but in the late 90s and early 2000s, there were great intentions to care for people with undertreated levels of pain, including children and teenagers. Trusted organizations like the CDC, the United States Health and Human Services Department, and others made it a priority to see that MDs and others more aggressively treated pain. And that almost always regarded upping the strength of the medications from not just Tylenol or ibuprofen, but to things like opiates. And that wasn't just for acute pain, a broken bone, a kidney stone, or postoperative pain. It was in particular for what they called undertreated chronic pain. So the CDC, HHS, the FDA went on and approved OxyContin, our specialty societies, the Joint Commission on Hospital Accreditation. All of these well-meaning, well-intentioned doctors, pharmacists, and scientists followed this plan. Well, pain levels did decrease, but as we've all seen, there were very serious, what we call unintended consequences. Actually, long-term devastating consequences. We've talked about suicide and the mental health challenges in this room significantly. 20 years later, after hundreds of thousands of citizens have died related to accidental or intentional overdoses, addictions that may have started with the best intentions, but now still millions of families across our nation are dealing with current addictions and substance abuse. 20 years later, we're dealing with it in House Bill 1013 last year, trying to address new things in House Bill 520 this year. So now several of these trusted organizations have changed their guidance, their orders. Why is that? Because of the significant unintended consequences to patients, in particular unintended consequences often to Georgians. The American Academy of Pediatrics was mentioned, and now they recommend almost zero opiate use is recommended below age 18, not because it wouldn't help short-term in the pain, but because of unintended long-term consequences of such a high risk of addiction and all those complications. So number one, that sometimes these respected organizations are sometimes incorrect in their guidance, and they correct it when better data becomes available. Second possibility was, well, the state shouldn't interfere. We shouldn't have legislative interference with our doctors and their decision-making, along with patients. Well, that's true most of the time. There are narrow times, though, when the state does, quote, get involved. An example that I just mentioned was when well-meaning doctors are prescribing controlled substances, whether sedatives, opiates, or others. Well, the legislature is definitely involved. It now requires doctors like me to, before we prescribe something, to review a database, the PDMP. It must be checked prior to prescribing. Pharmacists, our pharmacist friends, must check and enter prescription data before dispensing any of these prescriptions. And frankly, physicians or pharmacists who dispensed or prescribed medications that inappropriately, we'd get counseled. We could be even sanctioned. We can lose our license. The state has indeed intervened between the patient and their doctor. Why did they do that? They did it because it was needed to protect patients, to protect Georgians, which is our role here. Finally, the third and last thing, science is still in the early stages of understanding and grappling with what's been a tremendous rise in reports of gender dysphoria. Some reports say as much as 2,000%. Scientists are trying to understand that, and unfortunately, as has been mentioned here earlier, there's very little peer-reviewed, solid science to evaluate the effects, especially the short and even more important, long-term effects of many of the irreversible treatments and surgeries. And we're not alone in this in Georgia. There's other states that are dealing with this. There's other countries dealing with this, even some nationalized healthcare institutions in England, Germany, and other places. Some in England, for example, have even gone as far as before puberty blockers can be prescribed by the National Health Service doctors, you have to get a court order because the courts realized that a 16 and below really are not able to make what they would call an informed decision, a decision where you can understand the risk benefits and make a decision. These countries and other areas and many states are reining in some of the uncontrolled expansion of early treatment for gender dysphoria. They're recognizing the serious consequences that could be resulting from treating irreversibly, and that's a key word in this bill, irreversibly, what often might be a temporary or transient condition. Now, there are several studies that have shown that when youth express gender dysphoria, if left untreated with medication, maybe treated with mental health care, but untreated with medications or irreversible surgeries, that somewhere between 61 and over 90% resolved by their early 20s. 61 to over 90% of those feelings may resolve by the time they reach adulthood. And so there's severe discomfort with their biologic sex. If no chemical or surgical intervention has resolved, it often appears that many of those people revert back to the suicide rate of the general population. What the other side of that is those who do go through gender treatment still have a 5 times higher suicide rate. So you have an 80% reduction when those early feelings and thoughts resolve. So you're actually saving lives by not doing early treatment. The medical science community is just beginning to really evaluate and understand all these unintended consequences of often well-meaning policies, treatments, and surgeries. So we're left with those 3 things. Organizations, respected though they are indeed sometimes incorrect in their recommendations, however well-meaning. Doctors and medical treatments do sometimes require state involvement to protect individuals from even well-intentioned physicians. I was brought an article about some cultural practices 15 or 20 years ago that were going on in some communities where the state did have to intervene in particular surgical treatments that parents were approving. So doctors do sometimes require state involvement to do what's best to protect Georgians. The data's not, while it's not as clear as we'd all like, it's actually raising some serious questions regarding irreversible surgeries and treatments. Now, somebody mentioned, I think a law school classmate, nothing in this bill touches adults making decisions. The key point is this is, Senate Bill 140 is indeed a light touch. It's a narrowly tailored bill that restrains these often well-meaning physicians and surgeons for irreversible treatments and surgeries on children. This bill has well-done exceptions that relate to the very rare genetic abnormalities, endocrine-related conditions where science is much more settled. Once again, nothing in this affects adults in their own informed decision-making. It simply asks doctors to pause any irreversible treatments and surgeries on an individual until they're 18. When a child's brain is more developed, they can more fully understand as an adult the potential side effects of surgical and chemical treatments that can cause irreversible results. We all agree, I think, that children do deserve care, including mental health care. They deserve compassion. This bill offers them the opportunity to be the adult that makes an informed decision on a permanent, irreversible change to their own body. SB 140 is really a very reasonable, a very narrowly tailored bill. It very strongly follows what we mentioned earlier, first do no harm. I really hope you'll support this along with me and vote yes on SB 140. Thank you, Mr.
The gentleman has yielded the well. That concludes all of the debate time that's been allowed on this bill. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair, have an objection? We have an objection to the passage of the bill. Let's see, Mr. Clerk. We have an objection. Does the gentleman move? Gentleman moves. This is our posture. We have an objection to the report of the committee. She waves. All in favor of the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. For what purpose does Representative Oliver rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true, sir, that even if you don't accept the reality of the defects of this bill that criminalizes medical advice and the standard of care, that the real ultimate reality of this bill is that it's simply mean to point your finger at somebody else's child and say she looks funny and she runs too fast? Isn't that true, Mr. Speaker?
I'm sure the lady believes what she speaks. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 96, the nays 75. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. For what purpose does Representative Bonner rise?
To make a motion,
State your motion.
I move that Senate Bill 140 be immediately transmitted to the Senate.
There is objection. Does the gentleman move? The gentleman moves. Our posture is we're going to vote on the objection. All those in favor of immediate transmittal will vote yes. All those in favor of immediate transmittal will vote yes. Those opposed to immediate transmittal will vote no. The clerk will unlock the machines. For what purpose does Whip Park rise? He waves. Have all members voted? For what purpose does Representative Cannon rise? Representative Park Cannon.
A parliamentary inquiry on this.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that we can wait to understand the impacts that this will have on transgender children? We don't have to immediately transmit this to the Senate right now.
I'm sure the lady believes what she speaks. This bill has been thoroughly debated. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the question of immediate transmittal, the yeas are 97. Yeas are 97. The nays are 74. The bill has passed and is on its way to the Senate. Mr. Clerk, we're going to move on with the rules calendar. Will you read the caption to SB 5555.
SB 55 by Senator Perry, the 42nd to be titled Act to amend Chapter 80 and Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to general provisions relative to counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities so as to prohibit the regulation of businesses of persons under 18 years of age. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Small Business Development. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Representative Oliver is recognized to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Constituents of the House District 82, who are the parents of young children, learned that it was illegal under Georgia law for children to have a lemonade stand. The purpose of Senate Bill 55, brought by my senator, Helena Parent, allows, in limited circumstances on private property, children to have lemonade stands. I'm guessing we all had some form of a lemonade stand. I did. And I'm guessing that that was an activity that was fun and positive for the family and positive for the neighborhood. And in many, many circumstances in my neighborhood, those lemonade stands are set up for the purpose of some charitable contribution to some entity that the family may support. This bill allows lemonade stands without license, without registration, without regulation, without statute, when it is operated by a child under 18, when they are in school, when they have the permission of the private property owner, and when the legal aid stand does not generate more than $5,000 a year in income. This bill is supported by the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. We're in a different tone right now than the past bill, and it's a little bit unfortunate for me personally that I can't celebrate this bill on behalf of the children and the families of my district, having listened to the last hour's debate. But colleagues, this is a good bill. It is a bill to remove regulation from lemonade stands in your neighborhoods, and I ask for your favorable consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, Mr. Speaker.
The lady has some questions. She yield.
Yes, sir.
Representative Bentley, in the rear to your left, has a question. Representative Bentley is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentlelady yield?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I just can't hear back here. Is it not true that we have a lot of
Lady will suspend the question. Can you hear now?
Yes, sir, I can. Thank you.
You're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentlelady yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not true that we have a lot of young people in the gallery and working as pages today?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it not further true that without this bill, it will be illegal for, you're saying it would be illegal for young people under the age of 18 in most counties across this state to sell lemonade, set up a lemonade stand and sell lemonade to make extra money to help them buy school supplies, school clothes, or whatever the case may be without this legislation?
It is in some circumstances, and it is not usually enforced, as we know. This family had a discussion. This was a family learning experience. This is what we're going to do. Let's figure out what the law allows us to do. And they discovered that there was illegal in unincorporated DeKalb to have food operations that may be described as a lemonade stand. This is not, we don't enforce a lot of these local laws, but it is right for us to consider the basic freedoms of a family and a child to make their own decisions about whether or not to have a lemonade stand. So
Yes,
this
ma'am.
bill is necessary.
Thank you for your work on this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady, yield for another question.
Yes, sir.
I know this gentleman's had some experience down around the military base in Hinesville, Georgia. Representative Williams is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the lady yield?
Yes, sir.
It might have just happened, and is it not true that it did not just happen in DeKalb, but about 7, 8 years ago, we had chief of police in Midway to come and remove some children from a lemonade stand, but it is not further true that because of that action, they were almost ready to take the city charter away. Parents didn't like it at all. Good bill.
Thank you, sir.
Lady, yield for a couple more.
Yes, sir.
Representative Thomas, to your right. Representative Brad Thomas has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Do you yield?
Yes, sir.
So I have one question, specifically line 29, that says generates gross receipts up to $5,000. Just my question is, how often do you get a receipt from a lemonade stand?
I think that not often would be my response, but I think the proof, if anybody wanted to charge a lemonade stand, the proof of how much money they raised would be available to whoever was making a decision they're violating or not, just by the testimony of I brought change in and this is how much I earned. So there would, without a receipt, it could be provable that the amount earned on the lemonade stand was less than $5,000.
But further inquiry?
Yes, sir.
But isn't that true that now you're going to put an accounting burden standard on a lemonade stand to prove that they have $5,000, that they meet this bill or don't?
If the county wants to use its resources to enforce the $5,000 limit, I believe that is their option. I don't think they're required to do so, like they're not required today to shut down lemonade stands as they did in Midway. So I think that's the county's option if they want to assume that burden.
Thank you. I'll save my nest for parliamentary inquiry.
Was that a question or a parliamentary inquiry? I think that was a question.
No,
yeah, you're doing
I
good.
yield. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Gentlelady, yield for another question.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman knows about consumer affairs. The chairman of Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, Chairman Dickey, is recognized to your right for a question.
Does the lady yield?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you putting the 5,000 in there because I assume it would cover roadside peach stands.
I would very much want to protect roadside peach stands, particularly in your area of the state.
Thank you.
Lady, yield for Representative Martinez.
Yes, sir.
To your right. In the back.
Does the gentlelady yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that this bill is a local, city, county, business, and HOA subdivision issue? And I believe that the state should not get involved in approving or disapproving lemonade stands or any other stands. Also, this bill also caps sales at 5,000. Isn't it true that this is mainly a cash business and it will be difficult to determine any revenues? Thank you.
As the former mayor of a city, you would have the options to counsel with your local folks about whether or not you want to enforce the legality of lemonade stands, and you can share with me later what are the circumstances of which you would try to shut down a child's lemonade stand. I'd be interested in hearing that analysis. I think that there is options for cities and counties to make decisions.
Lady, yield.
Yes, sir.
Representative Frazier, to your left in the back, has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the lady yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Will this bill affect any of the children that we see on the right-of-way that is selling water, bottled lemonade, Cokes, and all of that, that are either on the right-of-ways or on private property that are on side streets?
It only affects private property. A child that's in a right-of-way on the street is not protected by this bill because you have to have the permission of the private property owner in order to set up the lemonade stand. My lemonade stand was in my parents' yard.
Thank you.
Lady, yield, we have a lot of interest. I'm going to take two more questions. One's from Chairman Martin to your right.
Serious question. The lady yield for a question.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that I hope if some young people are out there just trying to do something that the Department of Revenue will leave them alone as well?
I feel pretty confident that they have better things to do.
Well,
and if they don't have better things to do, I would like to have another conversation with them.
Yes, ma'am. And isn't it further true that I'm trying to get that on the record as legislative intent that just because we're making use of this that we don't want them to bother these young people with a sales tax permit. And isn't it further true, if you find somebody that's making more than $5,000 a year, I'd like for anybody to pass their name along to them. I'd like to look to go in business with them.
They would be a very successful young entrepreneur, and I think they would be an asset to any business. Unfortunately, as you know, the courts don't believe we have legislative intent in Georgia, and that's another discussion I won't engage in right now.
Chairlady Dempsey has a question if the lady will yield.
Yes, does the lady yield?
Yes, ma'am.
I am blessed in my community to have one particular young man that I know of that does this for a nonprofit. He raises much more than $5,000 every year in his own driveway of his own home with his parents' support. Is there anything in this measure that would impact his ability to do that?
I think that the will of the committee and the Senate and us consideration is that we should have a $5,000 limit. What you're suggesting is whether or not we should have a dollar limit on it. And that's a discussion that I'm happy to have at some other time. But for today purposes, I would like the body's favorable consideration of Senate Bill 55.
So just to clarify, if you will yield again, this would limit his ability to raise more than $5,000 to give straight to charity.
Yes, ma'am. Today, actually, under today's law, today limits him even more significantly because the local city or county has the right today to impose obligations for licensure or registration or other bodies. So this bill helps him forward a little bit, but maybe not totally if he is very successful in raising more than $5,000 in a year. Mr. Speaker, if you do not wish to allow other questions, I will yield the well.
The lady's done an outstanding job, and she has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question? Oh, we have a speaker. I'm sorry. My apologies. Representative Jasmine Clark is recognized to speak to the bill. We have some other speakers. Representative Park Cannon is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am here speaking in support of this bill because I'm supporting transgender children with lemonade stands. Transgender children who have digital goods, have clothing they're selling, have Post-its, have file folders, have pens, who are doing this because they understand they need money too, especially in the circumstances based on the last bill that we have. I think it's very interesting how hypocritical this body could be to say that under 18-year-olds do not in one circumstance have the ability to make these decisions about their lives, and now they do. They don't need parents even in this bill to do this. And I think that's a great thing, in fact, in the other bill they did. So I'm just really excited about this bill. I think y'all are too. I just want you to think deeply about the impact that we're having on students today. For history's sake, I know that kids who are transgender, who have lemonade stands, are excited about this bill. They came to the Capitol today because they were excited, and instead of being in the gallery right now excited about this bill, they are outside crying. I'm going to go join them. Thank you very much. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Representative Holland is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill, and I have to make a confession. Until a couple of years ago, I had no idea this bill was even necessary. I'm the parent of a small child that would like to set up a lemonade stand or a friendship bracelet stand or a chocolate chip cookie stand in my front yard. And until word of this bill started circulating, I thought that was my choice. My child felt compelled to set up a lemonade stand, usually in response to charity. A tornado had hit a nearby town, or he had heard about the war efforts in Ukraine. And I was his parent, so I could assess, is it a good idea for my child to set up this lemonade stand? Do I want to consult with my neighbors about setting up the lemonade stand? But I figured that choice was between me and my family, my property, and my child, and didn't think the government necessarily had any business injecting themselves into that decision. So imagine my surprise to learn as this bill was moving forward that the government wanted to regulate what my child and my family could decide to do on our private property and our home. On a more positive note, lemonade stands are good for our communities. We talk in this chamber about the importance of economic development and workforce development. What better way to prepare young people for a life in business than having them set up a lemonade stand in the front yard? Any of you who are parents know how this works. Your child thinks they sell a cup of lemonade for $1 and they get $1. Not how that works. I'm going to charge my child for the materials I had to go to Publix to buy for that lemonade stand, for the poster board that he used to make his advertisement. He's going to learn something about marketing because he has to make sure that the neighbors know to come buy lemonade from his lemonade stand. He might leverage some social media. It's gotten easier for him than it was for me at that age. We talk in this chamber about the importance of mental health of our young people. Supporting young people when they are determined to do something that makes a difference, whether it's make money for themselves or raise money for others who need it, is a wonderful way to build confidence, to help them feel seen, to allow them to exercise their own agency. When they have a lemonade stand with their fellow neighborhood children, it encourages teamwork. They learn how to work together on group projects. And I don't know about you, but I think lemonade stands build community. I live in a neighborhood not far from here, a residential neighborhood. Lemonade stands pop up all the time. And if I see a lemonade stand and I've got any change in my change drawer or $1 in my purse, I'm going to stop and reward those young people, not call code enforcement, reward those young people for having the initiative to put out the lemonade stand. And that's when I sometimes meet children in my neighborhood for the very first time. I meet their parents. One entrepreneurial young woman in my neighborhood was also handing out flyers advertising her pet sitting services and dog walking services. She was at 11 starting to save money for her own secondary education experience. This was how she was going to seed her college fund. I didn't want to see the po-po woo-woo come up and shut down that lemonade stand. She was thinking about her future. But because I had the chance to talk to her and talk to her mother, talk to her friends, talk to her friend's father, I got to know more people in my community. Lemonade stands are the way that we build the foundation for caring for one another and loving one another in our communities. It gives us another chance to interact with young people who maybe we don't usually get to see in front of us. Young people who just want to be recognized for what they are. Young people who just want the opportunity to speak up about the things they believe in. Young people who just want the support and encouragement of the people around them and who love them. The earliest documented lemonade stand was opened in 1873 in Brooklyn. It wasn't legally regulated then either. And in fact, this scourge of trying to enforce local business licensing regulations on lemonade stands actually caused the company Country Time. Y'all know Country Time lemonade? Anyone lazy like me that doesn't make your lemonade from scratch and knows the Country Time brand? They actually started an offshoot called Legal Aid, but spelled like lemonade, to offer up to $300 a person to get young children out of trouble when they get fined for holding an illegal lemonade stand. Here's what this bill is going to do. It's going to make it unnecessary for Country Time Lemonade to give $300 to cover the legal fees of any of the children in our communities, because we're going to be supporting our children in what they want to do and having their voices be heard by allowing them to sell you a cup of lemonade. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Representative Anulowicz is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today because I feel like most of y'all probably expect to hear from me when there's anything involving cities or counties. I like to stay in my lane, as it were. So I just want to say that I do support this bill. I think that it's tremendous. My children have had lemonade stands. I know that in my city, In my county, I don't think we've ever prosecuted anybody, but I know that it has happened elsewhere in the country. So it's good that we are on guard and prepared to make sure that we are ready to stand for our children. I am so happy to support this bill today, and I hope that you will join me in voting yes. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. That completes those that are in favor of the bill. We have a member who's has another opinion, Representative Martinez, to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a former council member and a former mayor, I heard all the comments. We love our kids. We love our lemonade stands. As a matter of fact, it's that time of year where you're going to have the cheerleaders on Saturday raising money. You're going to have the booster clubs raising money, selling donuts. But where does it stop, Mr. Speaker? Where does it stop? This is a city issue. This is a city issue. This is a county issue. This is a homeowners association issue. Where does it stop? We cannot tell these folks what to do in their cities. Let me tell you, as a mayor, I supported these kids. When have you seen a prosecution? We never prosecute these kids. And if there's any issue, if these families have any issues, that's why you got a city council meeting. You go to your city council chambers. If you have an issue in your HOA, you go to your president. Why are we legislators dictating what our city does? I'm telling you, I cannot believe that a family came to a legislator, a state senator, and had one complaint, and now we're voting on this issue. She should have gone to the city council members. She should have gone to a local mayor or an HOA or a county commissioners. We have a few county commissioners here. How does it feel for the state to tell you, cities, what to do? So I'm so against this because we keep voting on bills that we should not be involved in. We should not be involved in. So, folks, I'm totally against this bill. Thank you, and I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. We have no further speakers, but we will honor the chairman's time. This bill came from Chairman Mike Chokas's committee. But we'll do this first. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair has none. The previous question is ordered. Now we will move to chairman's time. Representative Chokas is recognized for up to 20 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we passed this bill out of committee, and the concern was dealing with permitting, dealing with registration, and dealing with licensing. Originally, it had regulation. That was struck and replaced with registration. And we consulted with the Municipal Association and the ACCG, and we found that they were neutral because they were involved in the process. The lemonade stands will still be regulated in the case there's more than one reason, but I can just cite one off the top of my head for public health. In case there was a boiled water restriction and the child didn't know there was a boiled water restriction, the health department would be able to regulate this. Now, members, y'all vote your conscience on this bill because apparently the author of the bill and the members that have been speaking in favor of it have kind of kidnapped the bill and are using it for other purposes. This is simply allowing our children to sell lemonade, Girl Scout cookies, donuts for fundraising events. and to help them. The other caveat that we have in this bill is that they have to be enrolled in a public school, a private school, a home school, or working towards their GED or any other high school equivalency certificate. Please don't take this out of context, either side. Let's vote for lemonade. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Yeah, we don't want to get into the donut category. Let's just stay on lemonade. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee? There's an objection. You're objecting to the committee report. Gentlemen, move. Gentlemen, move. Gentleman moves. Does the lady move? Representative Oliver, do you move?
Yes, sir.
Lady moves. We're going to vote on the committee substitute. We'll put your vote on the board. If you support the committee substitute, your vote yea. If you do not approve want to consider the committee substitute, your vote nay. And the clerk will unlock the machine. All members voted. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the adoption of the committee substitute, the yeas are 150, the nays are 18. Is there any objection to adopting this committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. The yeas were 139, the nays 30. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Clerk, will you read the caption to Senate Bill 193? 193.
Senate Bill 193 by Senator Gooch, the 51st and others to be titled an act to amend Chapter 40 of Title 50, the official code of Georgia Annotated, relating to promotion and deployment of broadband services so as to provide for the Department of Community Affairs to determine locations that are eligible for state or federal funding programs. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chairman Parsons is recognized to present the bill. Gentlemen, we'll suspend just for a minute.
No, it's on. It's on.
No, I got you. I want to make sure members give your attention to the member in the well. Chairman Parsons will present the bill. Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Speaker Burns. you know, this is a issue here that I've never heard anybody say that they were opposed to expanding rural broadband or broadband in general. And this is an issue that's been pretty close to my heart now for the last 7, 8, maybe even 9 years. So it's an honor to come up here today to bring this bill to you. It's an agency bill. It's relatively short, but I do think about some of the people I've worked with on this issue. I guess it was 7 or 8 years ago. I was on a joint Senate-House study committee. We went across the state. I co-chaired it with Senator Gooch, who's the author of this bill in the Senate, and we went around the state, and we heard from people around this state that I think some of us didn't really have a good understanding of how they did not have access to broadband, and how that they weren't able to do the things, pay bills online. Their kids couldn't do homework at home and look up things on Google and so forth, like people in metro areas do. Companies, little small companies that couldn't upload photos to a processing center to get them printed or published somewhere. All the problems across the state and impacting economic development, just having a negative impact on everything in those communities because of the lack of broadband. So it was an honor to have worked with Senator Gooch on this, but I have to mention the late Jay Powell, who chaired during the time we worked on this. He was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and we fussed a little bit about different things, but Representative Powell, he was from rural Georgia. He knew the issue really better than I did. We fussed, but he was correct about so many things. And I know some of the first legislation I had, we were trying to base it on the FCC mapping, and it turned out, and Representative Powell recognized this, that the mapping from the FCC just was not accurate. It didn't get it down to a small enough point to actually do what we needed to do. So he did a tremendous amount of work on this, and it's an honor to come up here and just bring this bill that he had been so intimately involved with back a few years ago. This is a short bill. This is an agency bill brought by the Georgia Technology Association with the support of the Department of Community Affairs. Those agencies consulted with the state's Broadband Advisory Committee, which included broadband service providers, internet trade associations, and state agencies to solicit their feedback and support. Their input has been incorporated in this bill, and we're not aware of anybody that has any opposition to this. It has 3 sections. The first section basically just says that consultants can be brought in because there has to be some things done, especially relating to federal funding, to do some further development of the maps. This allows consultants to be brought in on that. The second section just says DCA will separately determine the programs for state funding and federal funding, because the federal funding comes with its different rules and regulations. And then the third section, currently the mapping for the state of Georgia, if an area has internet at 25 megabit per second down and 3 megabit or up and 3 megabit down, they will not be included on the mapping. But because of some of the federal requirements, this would say that if that is the case, they could make exceptions to that. And that's pretty much the bill, really. And it just gives us an opportunity to continue with this process that we've been working on in the state for a good many years. It actually does my heart good to even bring this, because when we first started working on this issue, there was nothing in code about broadband or how it was going to be developed in the state, what had to be done, what entities had to be brought into it. So with that, Mr. Speaker, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to try to take them. Otherwise, I'll yield the well.
You have a couple.
Okay.
Chair Lady Houston, to your right, is recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know that a lot of rural areas have already worked with different, like my district has worked with EMCs, and we've gotten state money. Does this have anything to do with the state and federal money that's already been designated to us?
No. You know, there have been several different funding mechanisms that have come from the federal government There's already been some that have been given out. There's another big one that is coming, and I think that one in particular, in order to be able to do this and get that funding and get it out like it needs to be done, these are some changes I think in particular that need to be done for that. But as far as what's being done, no, it doesn't.
Well,
change
even if
anything.
it's not done, if it was designated to be a project, it's still a project.
That is correct, yes. Yes.
Right. Thank you.
And thank you, too. You've been involved in this issue for a long time, too, and I appreciate that.
Gentleman, yield for one more question.
Yes, sir.
Representative Ramon has a question straight in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Is it not true that we spent a lot of time in our committee learning about this issue and how there's still much work to be done and that bills like this are incredibly important?
That is true, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your help.
You have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask for your favorable consideration of this bill, and I yield the will.
The gentleman has yielded the well. We have some folks that'd like to speak to the bill. Some of them like it, and some of them don't. Rip Park is recognized to speak to the bill. He waves. Representative Jasmine Clark is recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise not because I am necessarily against this bill, but I think we have an issue in these chambers, in this building, in the proceedings that we do, and that issue is that we like to just baby step things that really need a lot more of attention. So to be clear, I am a huge proponent of expanding broadband. I have been since before I was elected. I have been since I was elected in 2018. It is greatly needed in our state. When we think about the lack of internet access, we normally think about our rural areas, and it is true that lack of broadband is a pervasive problem in our rural communities. Sadly, people who do not have access to the internet are at a great disadvantage in our current and future society. We saw firsthand what happens when something like a global pandemic strikes our communities, and there are people in parts of this state that had to find a way to get physical paper packets to students because they did not have the ability to do Zoom sessions. They had to be innovative in ways that made it very difficult for them to do what a lot of school districts in our schools did. Just, hey, everybody get on the internet. Hey, everybody download your assignment from Google Classroom. Hey, let's do a synchronous Zoom every day at 1:00 p.m. We saw this issue, and as a person who has studied microbiology, I'm here to tell you, with climate change and a lot of the things that is happening in our world and in our country, it's very likely that we might see those types of disruptions again. And so, if we do see those types of disruptions again, are we going to be ready? But another thing that I don't think people realize when it comes to access to the internet is that it's not just a rural Georgia problem. There are people all over this state, including people in the metro areas or just outside of those metro areas, that also don't have access to the internet, that also don't have broadband. You probably don't, if you live in the metro area, you probably can't fathom that there are pockets of places within your own community where people can't get on the internet, or they have to go to Starbucks, or they have to go somewhere else, or they have to purchase one of those little wireless hotspots in order to get access to the internet. Now, you've probably experienced this before. Have you ever gone to someone's house and all of a sudden your phone is not working in their house, and they're like, oh, I have a dead spot in my house, or oh, the internet just doesn't work that well on this street. And along with that, people really don't have a whole lot of options to choose from to get internet. You might have people who can only use, for example, Xfinity to get their internet. And if Xfinity isn't working well in their area, they don't have any other choices. Other people might try satellite, Starlink, all these other different things to try to get internet, and it might not be adequate. There are people in metro Atlanta that are dealing with some of the same issues that people in rural Georgia deal with when it comes to broadband. And I don't think anyone in this room would argue that when it comes to the internet, without having it, we are pretty crippled. You know, you right now can look up a bill and read that bill and be prepared to vote on that bill by looking it up in your phone, using the internet. There are people in Georgia today that do not have the luxury of even knowing what we are doing in this building, because the only access to the things that we vote on every single day, the only access is the internet that they do not have access to. And so you're probably saying, well, what is the issue? I feel like you agree with this bill. And you're right, I don't have a problem with expanding broadband in this state. It needs to be done. The problem I have is it needs to be done yesterday. We keep baby stepping this issue. This is not an issue that we need to baby step. We need to floor it. We need to put our foot on the gas pedal and floor it so people can get access to the internet, not that they want, but the internet that they need. I think this bill is a bill in the right direction, but I am so tired of feeling like when we sit in this chamber, all we do is do just enough to say we did something, but we never do enough to do something that is actually meaningful and impactful for the people of Georgia that send us up here to help them, to protect them, to give them what they need in order to thrive in their life. Now, I will likely vote for this bill, but this is not the first time I've come to this well during this session to talk about the fact that the things that we do in this chamber are not always what we tell our constituents we did when we go back home. You will likely vote for this bill, and then you will say, go back home and put on your campaign literature that you expanded broadband in your area. That's not what you did here. You might have taken a step toward that, but I would love to see us be bold in this chamber. I would love us to see us be bold outside of this chamber. I would love for us to engage with the people who can bring actual broadband to our communities and just make this happen. Let's stop taking baby steps. Let's be bold. Let's floor it for the people of Georgia who need to be able to get on the internet. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. Representative Al Williams is recognized to speak to the bill. He waves. Representative Mac Jackson recognized to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of Senate Bill 193. Since my friend from the coast, I'm going to support Senate Bill 143 because broadband is essential. It's vital to the economic development to this state and especially to our rural communities. While the FCC maps did not accurately show the underserved areas in rural Georgia, but thanks to the Department of Community Affairs, Georgia has led in mapping out these underserved areas. Washington EMC received $13 million for fiber optic build out to some of the most underserved communities in the state. When you look at Washington County, you look at Hancock County, Glasscock County, and Warren counties, those counties were underserved. They were inaccurately mapped out. As a member of the Rural Development Council, we focused on rural broadband for several years. Senate Bill 2 authorized the EMCs to engage in and to sell broadband. The federal monies have been a tremendous asset for rural broadband build-out in our rural communities. Underserved areas are thankful for what we're doing to build out rural broadband, and we're excited to see the furtherance of this build out in our underserved areas, especially in our rural communities, because we've seen tremendous growth in rural broadband in the last couple of years. So I support Senate Bill 1493, and I ask that you vote yes on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Representative Park Cannon is recognized to speak to the bill. Representative Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here really excited about this bill. Want to tell you some backstory. So 3 years ago, right before the pandemic hit, I applied to a program at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government to study an issue. And I was actually accepted as one of the Bonet Fellows, an LGBTQ fellow. You know, L being lesbian, G being gay, B being bisexual, T being transgender, and Q being queer. And so, of course, I was the queer legislator who was there, and we did have bisexual folks, we did have gay men, we did have lesbians, so we did not have anyone from the state of Georgia who was a transgender state elected official. So I thought that was super interesting and started looking around to see what we were going to do during this 4-week-long program, what these people were going to study, what those transgender elected officials were studying. One of those was Andrea Jenkins. She's actually the first openly transgender elected official in the United States. She's a black woman. She has medical conditions that are not related to her transition, but you know, she was excited to actually go to Harvard as well as me for 4 weeks, stay at the hotel off campus, go to class every day, do readings. And so we decided that we were going to team up with one of our colleagues from Alabama. Now, he was not transgender, but he was supportive of the trans community. And so he started studying broadband access. You see, in Alabama, they were having a lot of issues with folks being able to upload and download. And I got to know more than I wanted to know about what was going on. You see, here in Metro Atlanta, we do have some pockets that have broadband issues, and so many of the members of our caucus have actually done op-eds in our local papers talking about those broadband blind spots, those dark zones, those places where you can't upload and you can't download and you can't do your research. So what he did in Alabama, similar to this bill, was figured out which consultants that they could bring in to help their state agency work on broadband access. And I thought that was great, so I was excited to see that that was in this bill. But I think that it's also very interesting that in this bill, we understand why you bring in professionals who know more about the subject matter to study the issue and to help forward the issue, instead of just appointing a body of legislators who don't know about broadband issues. You actually bring in the consultants that know about this, and I thought that was great. Now, as we talk about upload and download speeds, I know in different districts, people have, you know, different access. You know, what they can download depends on where they are. You know, certain places don't allow for you to do certain downloads or don't allow for you to go on certain websites. But actually, at the end of the day, we can all use the internet to research issues that we might not know about. I think that, you know, many of us could benefit, you know, from doing some more research on transgender people. With this bill, we will actually be able to move forward in moving that research forward. And so I hope that we'll all continue to do the research that we need to do. I do not think that the bill is perfect, and in consult with some of my other colleagues, we've wondered, you know, if we could move a little bit more in this. Alabama actually is superseding us with what they're allowing for their upload and download speeds and what programs that they're letting their state departments contract with. So I do think that we need to work on this a little bit more with our department. We are excited about community affairs and all that they do, but I will be supporting this bill today and just hope that we continue to work on it. Thank you. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Representative Stacey Evans speaks to the bill. Representative Evans is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise in support of Senate Bill 193 and applaud this body on recognizing broadband as the necessity that it is. That was certainly brought to light during the pandemic, but it was obvious before that, and so I'm really, really glad to see us taking this step. But as we do it, I just want to make sure we realize that, yes, broadband is essential, and yes, we want to make sure that it gets extended to everywhere that there are people in the state, because if you're not able to connect to the internet, you're not able to connect to life these days, and that's just the truth. But we need to recognize that there are people across our state right now that don't have access to clean drinking water. And so while I'm glad to see us moving toward making sure that everyone has access to broadband, let's not forget the other basics. There are communities in Middle Georgia, there are communities right here in Atlanta that have had problems brought to life about the cleanliness of their water, and it's happening all across the state. And I call on EPD and all those who have the ability to make sure that folks have access to clean water to really pay attention to that as much as we're paying attention to broadband. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? There is objection. Whose bill is this? Does the gentleman move? Chairman Parsons, do you move? The gentleman moves. All those in favor, all those in favor of adopting the committee's substitute on SB 193, we will agree to the committee report as it came before this floor that we just debated. All those in favor will say aye, vote aye. Green. All those opposed will vote no. Red. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. The yeas are 166, the nays 0. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 167, the nays 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. If I can have your attention, please. Senate Bill 149 will be postponed to the next legislative day. Senate Bill 64 will be postponed to the next legislative day. For what purpose does Representative Crow rise?
Make a motion, Mr. Speaker.
State your motion.
I move that Senate Bill 90 be recommitted to the Rules Committee.
Mr. Clerk, will you read the caption?
Senate Bill 90 by Senator Dixon of the 45th and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 1 and Title 10 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to selling and other trade practices so as to provide for commercial financing disclosures.
On the gentleman's motion that SB 90 be withdrawn from the calendar and recommitted to the Rules Committee, is there objection? There is objection. The gentleman move.
I move.
Gentleman moves. Here's our posture. There has been an objection. We will vote on the objection and on the motion to move the bill back to rules. If you vote green, you will be voting to move it back to rules. If you vote red, you will be voting in the other direction. Mr. Clerk, will you unlock the machine? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. The yeas are 165. The nays are 1. Senate Bill 90 is back to rules. For what purpose does Representative Camp rise?
To make the motion,
State your motion.
I move to recommit House Bill 711 to the House Intergovernmental Coordination Committee.
Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 711 by Representative Reeves and 99 to be entitled an act to amend an act to provide a homestead exemption of $4,000 from all county school district ad valorem taxation.
On the lady's motion that HB 711 be withdrawn from the calendar and recommitted to the other Intergovernmental Coordination Committee. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. We'll be moving on to afternoon orders. Chair Lady Lynn Smith is recognized for an afternoon order. Lady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I'm holding up the bill that the pen that the governor used to sign House Bill 311 today. That's our bill that we passed to help victims of natural disasters. And so many of this House helped me with this bill that if I asked you to come up here and stand with me, nobody'd be in their seats. I cannot thank you enough for your help, your energy. And this bill will help our counties at the first of this year that were victims of this bill. Mr. Speaker, may they say something briefly? I yield by a little bit of my whatever time it is to these two.
Who would you like to speak? You mean to recognize?
Yes,
Chair?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chairman.
I just want to thank Chair Lady Smith for the hard work. You know, no, it is the hard work that she did, but for the benefit of us all. And lo and behold, last year, or was it 2 years ago, when the tornado went through Noonan, no idea that it would happen in Spalding County and surrounding counties. And I, again, not only to Chair Lady Smith, but everybody in this body that supported this bill, thank you, and what it will do for our citizens who have been suspect to things out of their control like these horrible tornadoes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Knight.
Thank you, thank you.
Chairman Stevens, Chairman Mathiak. What a terrible event that was. And we're all indebted to this House and this state for reaching out and helping make those communities whole. Representative Hutchinson is recognized for an afternoon order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, colleagues. Today I want to introduce you to Max. Max is 11 years old. He's a creative boy who likes to be outdoors, engaged in physical activities, play baseball, run, ride his bike, and is an avid fisherman. Max is a Legos enthusiast who enjoys building complete sets of Legos. Max is one of hundreds of kids who are available for adoption today in Georgia. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Bazemore is recognized for an afternoon order. Members, you need to pay attention. Give the representative in the well your full attention, respectful attention. You probably want to rise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And for those of you that have been asking how you can contribute to Representative Tish Negisi, her family's request is not for you to send money, but to donate to St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital on her behalf. And also, I failed to mention yesterday that the funeral is open to everyone, and if you have not received the arrangements for the viewing and the funeral, please let us know. Let me know, and I'll make sure you get that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. I think we sent it out this morning to all of the members, so thank you. Representative Bentley is recognized for an afternoon order, along with Representative Jackson.
Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, colleagues. We're so proud to have in our midst today the youth leadership group from Taylor County. They are down in room 216, so we ask all of you to please go by and speak to the students, the youth leadership of Taylor County. And we're also so very proud to have in the gallery the Levy family. So colleagues, if you will please stand and welcome the Levy family, Danny Levy, his wife Meg Levy, and their son Will Levy, all from Americus, Georgia, originally from Macon County. We're glad to have them here visiting. And Sandersville. They all represent all those areas. So we're glad to have the Levy family here in their state capital. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, colleagues.
Welcome to your state capital. Representative Reese is recognized for an afternoon order. There he is, Representative Teddy Reese.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today on behalf of the Freshman Democratic Caucus class to invite all of our colleagues Monday at 5 p.m. We will have a small memorial service for our classmate here on the Capitol grounds facing Washington Street between the front of the building and the church. It will start roughly at 5 o'clock, and the freshman class will be speaking, but we do invite anyone who would like to come out with us and just share a special moment with us. We will also have a dove release. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That completes afternoon orders. Mr. Clerk, will you read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions?
Honoring the life of Private First Class John W. Adams. Honoring the life of memory of Cleophas Orange. Honoring the life and memory of Donnie Curtis Holt. Commending and congratulating Naomi and Casey Cleaver. Recognizing and commending Pastor Gary K. Taylor. Recognizing and commending Kiana Williams. Commending Sergeant First Class William Butch Thornton upon his retirement. Commending the inclusion of new RSV immunization technologies. Recognizing March 21st, 2023 as World Down Syndrome Day at State Capitol. Recognizing and commending Julius Caesar. Commending Zion Episcopal Church. Recognizing and commending Ernest Hycon on his outstanding career as a musician. Recognizing and commending Iodeji Ibrahim Balogun. Recognizing and commending Carolyn Gray. recognizing and commending Lashley Wendell Winter, commending Patricia Henry and recognizing the Atlanta Caribbean Carnival, recognizing and commending Shobia Longville, recognizing and commending Michael Pickens, recognizing and commending Glenn Reed, congratulating the Wilkinson County Warriors for winning the 2022-2023 GHSA Class A Division II Boys State Basketball Championship, and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privilege resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. We're going to move on to announcements now. Chairman Knight is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sportsman's Caucus, we usually have our annual gathering. We'll go and go to a local range. I know it's late in the session, but it's going to happen this Monday. We've had a hard time getting the venue or making sure we had the venue, but please be on the lookout in your emails from my assistant about the range about next week. And if you could RSVP, that would help us as we make arrangements to prepare for Monday. But again, thank you all, and again, the annual event at the range. So if you've got your own pistols, weapons, please bring them next week if you want to shoot them. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Ann Allen Westbrook is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, colleagues. I wanted to make sure everyone is aware that Monday, March 20th, is our Maternal Child Health Provider Appreciation Day here at the Capitol. It's going to be in room 216 from 1 to 3. We're going to be recognizing and celebrating our trailblazing healthcare providers that help us work on this issue of maternal mortality in Georgia that we are so concerned about, and increasing access to care and access to choices for birthing people here in Georgia. Thank you.
Now, something get hung up on too.
Representative McLean is recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Working Family Caucus will be meeting in room 307 in the CLOB. And today we are doing Medicaid Unwind. And look forward to seeing you on room 307 CLOB. Again, 307 CLOB. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Panich, recognized for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Fulton County delegation will be meeting today at 4 o'clock in 605 CLOB. Please be present. Thank you.
Chairman Parsons, recognized for an afternoon for an announcement.
Thank you, Speaker Burns. Members of Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications Committee, we will meet Monday morning at 8 o'clock in room 403 here in the Capitol. We're going to be taking up that telecommunications consumer protection legislation we've been working on now for several days. That's on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What time did you say? 8 o'clock Monday. Very important legislation in his committee. Chairman Dickey is recognized for an announcement.
Philip. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Agricultural and Consumer Affairs Committee meeting is canceled for today. You should have gotten an announcement through there. Look for a reschedule early next week. Thank you.
That completes our announcements. We have some birthdays over the weekend. Well, actually starts tomorrow, March 17th. Chairman Mark Newton has a birthday. Happy birthday, Chairman Newton. On Sunday, March 19th, Representative Viola Davis and Representative Doreen Carter. There she is. Happy birthday, y'all. We do have some pages, so if you have a page, if you'll join us down front, we will have some photos and thank our pages for being here and working today. The majority leader of this House is recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that this House stand in recess until 4 p.m. and then adjourn until 10 a.m. on Monday, March 20th, 2023.
On the motion of the majority leader that this House stand in recess until 4 p.m. today, at which time then we will adjourn today, and we will come back here on Monday, March the 20th, at 10 a.m., Monday, March 20th, 2023, on the motion of the majority leader that we'll be back here for session on March the 20th. All those in favor will say aye. Sounds good. All those opposed will say no. Oh, yeah, the ayes have it. We're adjourned, or we're in recess.